hard and she never know I love her to skin. Bones are thrown, sticks and stones, just to let you validate your message to
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Away Days. Well, Away Days Thursday, I think I tweeted that as. And we are back for another blockbuster show for a blockbuster weekend of football between the two informed teams in the Premier League. We have to always get that in there, that's for sure. But it's going to be a fantastic chat tonight. Sorry I'm a little bit late. My technology is playing up a little bit. It's a little bit slow, so I do apologise if there's any issues with you guys watching. But we're back. The main man, Chris Hall, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Not too bad at all. And look, the big question on everybody's lips up in Newcastle and every Newcastle fan is can we win on Saturday? Can we stop Liverpool or affect Liverpool potentially winning the title? What do you think, Chris?
I think absolutely. I mean, normally, we go into these Liverpool games and it's normally a panic. Certainly is for me, from the area of the world that I'm from. I never normally look forward to Liverpool games, if I'm honest. I've been in Anfield many a times in the away end, and my heart's been torn out my chest when especially more recently in recent years with Joshua Williams when he scored that first goal. I think it was like in the first 8 minutes, and then I genuinely believed we were going to win, and then Liverpool just turned it on, and what happened. But I suppose I think we can win, Pete. If I'm honest, I think we've got the capability of winning, and we're not second in the form league by accident. So I'm thinking, why not? We can go out there, we can do it. But obviously, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But I'm really looking forward to tonight's guest coming on, Neil, who's joining us from the Anfield Wrap. And do you know what? On that note, Pete, I think you've tapped out, mate. So I'm going to bring on Neil. So big welcome to Neil. How you doing, Neil?
Very well indeed, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I think we've temporarily lost Pete again. We don't normally have these problems, Neil. I've got to be honest. So this is
maybe it's me.
But yeah, Neil. So you'll have heard then I was rather confident going into this game. Maybe my confidence misplaced. I don't know, but us Newcastle fans, Neil, you'll know, are currently second in the league when it comes to league form. Obviously in 2022. So we're feeling confident and we're feeling good about the game. But what are your thoughts as an away fan? Obviously, points are really important to you at the moment. You're in a massive title race. And you would argue momentum's probably with yourselves. Are you as a Liverpool fan looking forward to this game? Because I know in the past, I'm sure you looked at this fixture and thought, great, 3 points. But how are you feeling about it nowadays?
I don't think it's ever been great 3 points, to be honest with you. Even when Newcastle have found things difficult in different seasons, they often find a way to trouble Liverpool massively. I think the time the game happens helps us, although our manager doesn't think so. But I think that, the idea of if our manager could have picked between 12:30 and 7:45, he would have picked 7:45. If I can pick between 12:30 and 7:45, I'd pick 12:30. So I think that's a little bit in our favour in comparison to what could have been there. But I've never sort of looked at St James's Park and thought, that'll be some sort of stroll. It'll be some sort of easy 3 points. I would never think that, and I certainly wouldn't think that coming into Saturday morning. I think it's got the potential to be a really, really sticky game for Liverpool. I think that Newcastle are more than capable of setting up in a way to frustrate and create one or two chances, good chances against both Liverpool and Manchester City. You've got the two teams back to back across consecutive weekends, and I don't think the way they've fallen away, us away and them home, will make that much of a difference, to be honest with you. You know, the Etihad's a bit of a funny place to go. I think Newcastle are more than capable of getting something from the Etihad. We've seen that in the past. And I think that, you know, similarly, you know, St James's, for us, will make it exceptionally difficult. I think if it was at Anfield, I'd feel a lot more confident. I still feel relatively confident because, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think at the minute we're the best team in the world. But the best team in the world does not mean you win every single time you play football, and that's what we need to do at the minute. That's the position we're in. We've got to win every single time we play football. So ultimately, you'd end up sort of having to really, I think, gauge your loins for this one on Saturday. I genuinely think it's going to be a really tough game. I think it's going to be a massive battle. I think the thing that this Newcastle side shown is exceptional organisation, and that's what people might not have expected from Eddie Howe. But, you know, they're a very difficult team to counter-attack against. They're a very difficult team to create quality chances against. And, you know, I think that's what Liverpool, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool could just get something from a set piece or anything like that. That's what we're going to need to break the game open. It's going to be a really, really tough 90 minutes.
I'm really pleased to hear that, Neil. Normally, maybe I'm thinking of it from my friend's point of view. Maybe they're being falsely confident, but yeah, normally, you know, when teams, well, certainly when Liverpool come to St James's Park, you know, my mates have always kind of felt, oh, you know, we're good for 3 points here. But you're absolutely right. You know, it's you've got to make sure that you know, you turn up and you perform and you ensure that, you know, you do get those 3 points. But I think you are going to be coming up against a different Newcastle this time around, and I suppose that's where the elements of surprise could come in. But Pete, welcome back, mate. I know you were saying at the start that you've been having your technical difficulties, mate, and it's good to have you back. But what are your thoughts, Pete, on the match on Saturday afternoon? What are you feeling? How are you feeling about the game?
Nothing but confidence, really.
Oh, sorry, got you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think from my point of view, it's one of them where I've got to have confidence because the result's not riding on anything for Newcastle United. We're guaranteed to stay in the league, which was our aim at the beginning of the season, and certainly once Eddie Howe came in with the predicament that we're in. So it's a case of we're playing well at the moment. We're on the back of 4 straight wins. We should be confident going into any game, and I think that's what, you know, Eddie Howe's been alluding to. You know, when he's been asked questions about this run of fixtures coming up, starting with Liverpool on Saturday, and that, you know, we go in to win every single game. And that's exactly what I expect us to do. We looked and we talked about, Chris, ourselves, about the fact that we rested players on Saturday at Carrow Road, and I think we did that with the full intentions of making sure that those players rested. Shelvey, Shaw, Wood, that have covered so much ground over the last few weeks and ran themselves into the ground, that they got a nice rest. They weren't used at any point, to make sure that they were fully fit with a week's training, ready to go again. And you know, it's by no means is it going to be an easy game. Like Neil said, and quite rightly, Liverpool are quite arguably the best team in the world right now, and we're going to have to be on our game to be able to stop them. But the one thing I'll say is that, you know, and I know you'll agree with this, Chris, is the atmosphere, the fans, the war flags, all those little elements that they're going to come to us to see on Saturday that they probably haven't seen for quite a long time, and that does affect players. And it affects our players. It raises us by 10, 15%. Could that have a negative impact on them? You know, the last time I think we really rocked the boat against Liverpool was when Origi scored that late goal at St James's Park, when you went on that run alongside Man City. And Man City, I think, just picked you at the end. But, you know, we went toe-to-toe with you that time. And I think we'll do so again.
That game's a really good example of exactly the thing I was talking about before. Anyone who's complacent about this fixture, I just think they're idiots, to be honest with you. Both under a wide variety of circumstances. We win 6-0 in St James's Park in April 2013. We don't win the next 4 visits. And then the one after that is that game that you've just mentioned there, the Origi late winner, and that was in 2019. There isn't some sort of great Liverpool run at St James's Park that you can sort of point at, really, to be honest with you. So I'm under all circumstances, I'd always be concerned about the fixture, and obviously the way you're playing at the moment. I think there's a lot going on where. Again, I'll praise the organisation, which is the thing I didn't expect to be praised. And I thought I'd be praising some free-flowing football. I thought Newcastle will get themselves safe. I don't think it has been particularly free-flowing. But what it's been is, it's not been deep-lying defences just defending for their lives. It's been a really aggressive, smart pressing team, knows where the battles are on the pitch, knows how to look after the ball for a period of time, knows how to attack but without getting counter-attacked. Really structurally smart stuff from Eddie Howe in this Newcastle side, I think. So, the point about this is, I think for 45 minutes, maybe for an hour, we are looking at an absolute battle from a Liverpool point of view. I think it's so important we score the first goal. I think if we don't, we're going to find ourselves in real trouble. And that's why, for me, it is a really, really tough game. I think I don't like any of our remaining away games, to be honest with you. I think we'll be all right. We've got Spurs at home, 7:45 kickoff. And I think that, listen, they've got unbelievable talent, Tottenham, and they could find a way through against us. But I think there's also a fighting chance that we just murder them, to be honest with you. But we've got Newcastle, we've got Villa on a Tuesday night, and we've got Southampton now also on a Tuesday night. They're not pleasant aways. They're all the sides that are all capable of doing a thing or two. Southampton, we could win 5-0, but we could also find ourselves frozen out with a draw there. I think of those sides, at the minute, Newcastle look by far in the best shape, and have a certain couple of types of threat that take a lot of dealing with.
I'd agree, definitely. We'll go into some some particular people with regards to Liverpool. So obviously, you've got Jurgen Klopp as your manager. As far as I'm aware, today just signed a 2-year extension.
Yep.
Sorry, Pete, I think we've lost your volume, mate.
Yeah, I've lost Pete's volume. Klopp signing a 2-year extension is obviously great news. It's tremendous news, and it shows that he likes where the club's at. He likes the people he works for, he likes the people he works with, and he likes the people he works on behalf of, i.e. the supporters. You couldn't be happier with Jurgen. And it's great news, genuinely, overwhelming today in the office. We were all, punching the air and all that sort of stuff. It was massive for us, and I think it's good news with Saturday on the horizon. I think it's also just good news, with an eye on the summer. The idea that Jurgen's going to be managing Liverpool till 2026 is a real boost for us, and I think it's something that we're obviously delighted about. And from there, then you expect opportunities to win silverware to keep coming. If there's one thing Jurgen's proven or demonstrated to us, it's that the journey is as important as the destination. That's very much his outlook and the way in which he goes about his business. It's not as simple as whether or not you win a trophy, as whether or not you've had a good season. We've already won 1. We could win 4 this season. We might stay at 1, but that won't take away how excellent this team's been up to this point. We can't be just defined by that. You can't be just defined by silverware. And that's what Jurgen's all about, really. He's about bringing you adventures and bringing you good times. And that's why it's brilliant that he's signed an extension, because that's what he's done. He's brought good times, and he's going to continue to do so. And he believes in bringing good times. He believes in the people. He believes in the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I must admit, Neil, when I saw the news, I thought, oh God, another 2 years of Klopp. Because as an opposing fan, Liverpool under Klopp have just been absolutely outstanding. And, as you mentioned earlier, the fact that you're now going for four trophies, it's absolutely huge, especially at this stage of the season. You've got one wrapped up already, and you've got a very, very good chance of getting the other 3. But what I want, sorry, go on, Neil, go on.
No, what I'd say is, listen, I'd love us to get all 3 of the other 3, of course. I would. Alan Thompson's asked in the comments there, do you think this is the best Liverpool team ever, or do they have to win 4 trophies this season? I think if they do win 4 trophies this season, there's no arguments they're the best Liverpool team ever. That's what I would say. But I think that they may well be anyway, or some of them are, and all that sort of stuff. But I'd just take, if you offer me right now either of the big 2, the league or the Champions League, I'd be delighted. Liverpool have been going since 1892, and we're the most successful side in English football history. But we've only won the league or the Champions League, albeit the fact that the European Cup didn't start until the mid 1950s. But we've only won the league or the Champions League in 25 of those seasons. So Liverpool have been going a long, long time, but it's 1 year in 6 that we've managed to do anything like that, and that includes a period where we won 6 leagues and 3 European Cups in 9 seasons. So, where all that's concerned, any season where we win either of those two is a great, great, great year, and I couldn't be happier, and I just love either one of them. It's not about being greedy at this point, but this team, I think what it's shown this season, it deserves to lift one of the big two, and with a bit of luck, it does.
Yeah. I mean, if you had a preference, Neil, you personally, what one would you like to see? If you could only pick one, what would be the one that you would want?
What we haven't got to do is because of COVID, we never got to win the league together, and we never got to spend a season coming onto the pitch as champions. And with everything that goes with that, we never got to go to the away games. We won the league before COVID hit, to all intents and purposes. It's anyone who ever tries to sort of act as though that isn't the case, they're kidding themselves. We were one result away from the title at that point. So, ultimately, the league was done and dusted. It was done and dusted by Christmas in that season. But we still never got to all win it together, and then we never got the season afterwards where you get to go to your home games and cheer on the champions, and go to your away games and clap on the champions. We've not gone to Goodison Park as champions, if you sort of know what I mean. And so that remains. If I had to pick, I'd pick that, and that'd be the reason why. If it wasn't for that, I probably would go with the Champions League. But I would, because for a variety of reasons, not least because I very much do not want Manchester City to win the Champions League. But ultimately, I think, if I had to pick one at this point, I would pick the league. I think it'd be, I think it'd be great. But again, I would be just delighted with either.
Yeah, no, understandably, absolutely. You'll probably see, Neil, we've had loads of questions in the chat, and I'm gonna come to those a bit later on, and that's something that we normally do. But Pete is normally organises this show, so you'll have to bear with me a touch. But what I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm just looking here at what Pete's loaded up on the system, and I'm dying to talk to you about this player because he's had such a big impact this season. But I want to talk a little bit more about Luis Diaz.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in terms of his impact, certainly from the outside looking in, he seems to have just effortlessly come into this team, and he looks like he's been there for 2 or 3 seasons. But from a Liverpool fan point of view, how pleased are you with the impact that Luis Diaz has had since he's joined?
Oh, it's been absolutely tremendous. He's very much come in. He's hit the ground running. He looks like he's been there for years. In some moments, the way in which he fits the system. It's a difficult, a lot of players come to Liverpool. Fabinho, who I think is a phenomenal footballer, comes to Liverpool and takes 3 or 4 months to settle properly and get used to what Klopp wants. Diaz, he's trusted, he's thrown in. I think it's obviously a little easier as a winger in general. Your mistakes are less costly. You just lose the ball. Whereas if you play number 6 or you play centre back and you make a mistake, then there's every chance it results in a goal. But he's been excellent. He really has. He's electric to watch. He's brilliantly direct, but he's also shown a willingness to bring other players into play. He's got some fantastic assists in there already, and some attempted assists. I think he looks in really, really good shape. But the other thing it's allowed is it's put Sadio Mane into the middle. So the manager's now got Mane in the middle, and Mane's been absolutely brilliant, to be honest, at centre forward, and he looks he's enjoying it massively. But what that's also done is it's meant that Liverpool's 2 best players, 2 best attackers at the very least, in Mane and Salah, are now playing closer together. It wasn't that Mane and Salah had nothing to do with each other when one was on the right and one was on the left, but obviously there's literally another footballer in the way, and there's a huge distance between them on the pitch. You saw the goal the other night against Villarreal. It's a Salah through ball for a Mane finish. Liverpool score at the Etihad. It's a Salah through ball for a Mane finish. All of a sudden, I think it unlocks more out of Salah's game, because I think Salah's actually underrated in terms of not his goal scoring or his dribbling, but in terms of his football and brain and the way he can bring other players into play. And also what it's done is it's given Sadio Mane a real sort of focus. Mane's goal scoring record since he's gone to centre forward has been second to none. And one of the reasons why I think it's made a big difference is he's doing a couple of things. One is he's taking things early. And the other thing that he's doing is all of his attempts, they're all between the posts. They're almost all inside the penalty area. He's not having to do a lot and then get his shot off. He's able to get his shot off and then get a shot off even from an acute angle or something like that. He's able to get his shot off. He can go left foot or right foot. He's good in the air. He can arc it one way. He can arc it the other. He's more than capable of being a 25 goal a season number 9, Sadio Mane. And that's what we've seen since he's moved there. And Diaz has been a big part of that. So Diaz can sort all this out. He can look after the space. He's dynamic. He's direct. But Sadio then is free to play through the middle. And suddenly Mo Salah's got two lads he can pass to who are remarkably quick, and he can use that side of his game as much as his goal scoring.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Pete, welcome back, mate. I hope you're back with us. I can see you back anyway, but I hope the audio is holding up, mate. I've just been speaking to Neil about Luis Diaz and the impact that he's had. And Neil's been saying that it's allowed Sadio Mane to kind of go through the middle, and we're seeing, big returns from his goals and stuff. But how impressed have you been, Pete, with Luis Diaz? Is he a player that has been on your radar since he joined Liverpool?
I don't know what my volume's like. I've got to be honest. It's you're good.
It's
not good. But with regards to Diaz, he's a world class player. He's world class, and he will just get better, I think, as he goes along. With with inevitably, whether it's next season or in a couple of years, either Mane or Salah moving on, in my opinion, I think he's the perfect replacement for them to kind of take on that mantle. And that's what I think a lot of Liverpool fans, Neil, you might correct me on this, have maybe been a little bit worried about, is where do we go after Salah and Mane and how good they've been over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. But you're now finally seeing a couple of players coming through in Jota and Diaz, where you're looking at genuine, maybe not like for like replacements, but replacements in which they can continue to be the team that they want to be. And the way in which they're doing that is fantastic. And it's, for me personally, I think it's a great model for Newcastle United. Looking at how you guys pick your players and how you select your players and how you integrate them into the team, it's the best model, and it doesn't always cost millions and millions and millions of pounds to do.
Yeah, I think that there's a real desire from Liverpool. The hierarchy is they want to make stars. They don't want to just buy them. And I think that's been the outlook all the way through. And I think that's part of that. What that does is it helps sort of create your team ethic. All of these players have established themselves in conjunction with one another. And they're all players that suit whatever the system Liverpool choose to deploy actually is. There's no one coming in who redefines that system, who says, you've got to play this way now. They'll come in and they'll fit us. You've obviously got to tweak things for footballers, don't get me wrong, but they'll come in and they'll suit the way in which we want to play and what we want to do next. And the two really good examples of footballers who now find themselves in the mid-20s when Liverpool were beginning to look like a slightly older squad. The Liverpool have got a bit of a lack of players, or have had, less so now, but around 24, 25 who look as though they're going to be influential. And now, guess what? That's what they've got. And I think that, Liverpool may well look to do another one of them probably not this summer, but next summer, where they'll have their eye on whatever the next sort of coming force is in attack. And, you talk about the mindset that Liverpool have. I expect them to, you did Canate last summer, they've just done Diaz. I think they'll do another couple of midfielders this summer. They'll have a couple that they've got their eye on, and then from there they'll let a couple of midfielders go, and all the way through I think it's this idea of just sort of backfilling sensibly, allowing players therefore a little bit of time to settle, a little bit of time to get the system, to know what they're about and know why they're being bought, and then from there just making sure that you're allowing footballers to have opportunities. And we look in really good shape for that at the moment. It can all go wrong. It only takes one bad summer where you sell the wrong two and you buy the wrong two, and suddenly you've got to live with those mistakes for a while. And I think that's why Liverpool are quite risk averse when it comes to transfers. I don't think Liverpool take many punts. I think that because we can't afford, at the level we're at and who we're trying to compete with, we haven't got much room for manoeuvre. We can't really afford that many mistakes. We can't afford to have a player we can't get off the books, especially if they're very, very well paid. So that's another thing. Diaz has supposedly come in on less than 100 grand a week. Jota came in on less than 100 grand a week. So the pair of them still are on less than 100 grand a week playing for Liverpool. So again, if it had gone a little bit wrong, or if Liverpool had concerns, then it makes it easier to be able to move them on as well if you need to. Yeah. So I think all of that is the outlook, and I think it is a good model, but I think it means you need your whole football operation to be integrated from top to bottom. You can't do that if you're going to have hobbyists, or if you're going to have interventions, or if you're going to cycle through managers. You can't do that, because all it needs is a new manager comes in and says, well, this fella doesn't fit me, this fella doesn't fit me, this fella doesn't fit me, and then you're in real trouble. Liverpool need the stability. It's why the club contract thing's so important. Liverpool, needs that idea that what it's going to be next, we've already got a grip of. What it's like in 3 years, we've already got a grip of. We're working towards that. We've got Kate Gordon, who played some games for us this season. Young lad, 17, got him from Derby. Rooney says he's the best teenager he's ever seen. And I'd like to think that Wayne is included when he looked in the mirror when he says that. And, you know, he could well come through on the right-hand side of attack. He showed real poise. He played against Arsenal earlier in the season in the League Cup. You know, he didn't look out of place in that game particularly. So, you know, Liverpool will see a future for him, but you need to be planning that all the time. Where are his games next season? What's the outlook for that? Does he need to go on loan like Harvey Elliott did? Or is there opportunity for him at Liverpool? But if you're saying there's opportunity for him at Liverpool, you've got to get him on the pitch. Yeah. Working all that out, you don't do that overnight. You know, you're doing that. You do it now, right now for next season. You're working out what your transfer targets are this summer, for this summer, back last October. You work this through all the while. And what you can't then have is a new piece of the puzzle that just sort of gets dropped in and becomes disruptive and says, actually, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it this way. So that, I think, is you know, that's what is so important. And that's why Liverpool's model, whilst I think a lot of clubs can say, well, we'd like to do it like Liverpool, you can very quickly end up in a position where to do that, you've got to have got a lot of other decisions right and then say we want to do it like Liverpool.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that, Neil. And it's funny because when you were describing about how quickly it can go wrong, especially when new managers come in, Man United just sprung to mind. I mean, we've seen what's going on at Man United, and it's worrying for them, isn't it? Being a Man United supporter now must be something else, but that's not our concern anyway. Sorry, Neil, you're going to say something.
I mean, firstly, it's always my concern. And secondly, you know, historically, with the exception of when they've had two managers in charge, maybe three, Manchester United are in their natural position.
No, I think that's absolutely fair to say. Before we move on, Neil, again, I wanted to, while we were talking about, you know, the front three, I wanted to ask you about this guy, Bobby Firmino.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as a future for Bobby Firmino? Because obviously he's a couple of seasons ago, he was an integral part of that front three, and he played as a bit of a false nine, if you like. But I see now that, you know, Jota had come in and played fantastically well, and you've just been talking about Mane being played through the middle. But what future do you see for Bobby Firmino? Do you think he's staying, or do you think he will be eased out?
I think it'll be eased out, but I think it'll be the summer of 2023. I don't think it's going to be this summer. There's a big thing, and it's, you know, without getting into the ins and outs of the wider Newcastle scenario, but there's a real opportunity for the first half of next season for a side that isn't playing European football to be able to really assert itself. No one's really engaged with the schedule the way it looks next season. They play 16 league games before the World Cup, which is a huge number. So there's a lot of midweek games in the league, but also when there isn't a midweek game in the league, there's a midweek Champions League game. So they get all 6 group games done by then as well. So for instance, at the minute, Tottenham or Arsenal are going to finish probably going to finish in 4th. If Arsenal especially get a Champions League place, they have not got the depth of squad to be able to compete in the league and do that at once. Now, they could go and buy 5 in the summer, but then you spend the whole first half of next season trying to integrate the new players who don't understand quite what it is that they're doing yet. And so you've got a different vulnerability there. My point is, Liverpool have ended this season with perhaps a slightly bigger squad than Jurgen Klopp would normally like, but there's an argument that you go into next season with a slightly bigger squad than Jurgen Klopp would normally like, because you're going to need to rotate constantly. It's going to be a big thing. So Liverpool having 5 quality forwards, of which Roberto Firmino is very much the 5th, that's not a problem. Liverpool accepting that ultimately Roberto Firmino wouldn't get much money in the market, but he's a really useful player who understands how Liverpool play and function. That's, you know, fantastic then, because if your go-to move when things aren't going great for you is go and get yourself some Roberto Firmino, well, that is absolutely tremendous, and that's what Liverpool can look to do. And that's why, you know, I hope he does see his contract out, and then I hope he goes somewhere and they pay him £100 million a week, because he's been absolutely incredible for us and he's been so important for us, that he goes and gets one last, either goes and has a brilliant time somewhere in Brazil he's always wanted to play on the one hand, or on the other hand goes and gets some massive payday, or ideally for him some combination of the two. But that's, you know, I think footballers leaving on frees is, when the contract expires, is going to become more and more part of the game. I don't think there's a lot of people who try to argue there's going to be an eradication of transfer fees. I don't see that. But what I see is transfer fees maybe being a bit rarer all the way through this, and more players and clubs just going, it's okay, you run your contract down, we're happy, you're happy, you've been a great servant, we'll all keep working together until the end of it, don't you worry at all. There'll be more of that sort of thing.
Definitely. wouldn't mind Bobby Firmino playing up front for Newcastle United. I'm not gonna lie, it'd be a tremendous signing for us. But yeah, like you said, he deserves a really nice send off because he's been a tremendous, underrated. Like you talked about as well, underrated player at Liverpool. I remember when I think you were there, Chris, at the game where we lost 3-1, where Zetro Williams scored that fantastic goal. And actually, I don't think, please correct me if I'm wrong, that game, I don't think Bobby Firmino started. He came on and literally transformed the game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I distinctly remember him coming on later on in the second half and just changing the game up. Just a little couple of movements in that little pocket that he picks up. He
did a wonderful piece of skill for Salah's goal. It was ridiculous. Our whole defence just stood still, and he done this one flick, and Salah just buried it. It was fantastic to see. To be fair, like you can't when players do things like that, and goals go in like that, you've just got to stand up and go. Like we've just seen an excellent piece of skill there that's basically got the goal. I think I can't remember though. Didn't he start, Neil? I could be wrong.
Which specific season? Is this the lockdown game? The first lockdown game?
It was before that.
Because he set up Sadio Mane in the lockdown game. I think I remember that one from him. But in general, he is just a phenomenal footballer, genuinely, and he is the sort of player who, there's lots of contenders for most important player under Jurgen Klopp, but he was there before Klopp got there, and Klopp straight away, as soon as he could, started building it around him. And I think that's the thing. That's the sort of forward that you want, the sort of football that you want, someone who you can build it around. And he's not just built it around him, but he's still doing it now. And he'll have a big moment on the end of the season with a bit of luck, Roberto Firmino. He might be out for Saturday. He's had a foot injury, so he wasn't involved last weekend, and he wasn't even on the bench against Villarreal. So I don't think you'd see him from the outset. On Saturday, I think if he's going to feature between now and the end of the campaign, it'll come a little bit later. But this season he scored 3 or 4 goals in Europe. He scores the opener against Inter Milan away. These are big goals, big goals, and you can take them for granted. I think at times, not when you're as lucky as we are, where you've got so many goal scorers. But Firmino's in this position where he's still got a big thing to do. I think the rest of the time he's at Liverpool.
That must mean that kind of makes sense, really. Why, if he's suffering with an injury, why Divock Origi's come into the team now? Look, we'll just touch on him very briefly. Divock Origi's he's been not a huge player for you in terms of playing loads of minutes, but he's created big moments for you guys. Is it 100% certain that he's going on a free in the summer?
Nothing certain where Origi's concerned. He may well choose. I think Liverpool and Divock have got an option where they can either both take another year. And it wouldn't surprise me if he chooses to do that. He's very settled in Liverpool. He's actually created a scholarship program at the university, Divock Origi, which a lot of people outside the city don't know. He's happy. He's been happy. I think we see football as basically what we get to see on the pitch on a Saturday, and we forget that footballers have got jobs. It's a job. They go to work, and I think Divock Origi is very much like his workplace and feels as though it's improved him as a footballer. And I think he's happy with that. The thing is, it probably is time for him to choose to go. He is out of contract. It will be he will leave, and there'll be no transfer fee for him. I just want him to go somewhere else where he'll have the opportunity to do genuinely great things. To be honest with you, to do things that result in winning trophies. Klopp signed this new deal today, and it actually made me think about sort of the Klopp tenure. There was a home game against Crystal Palace where we got beat 2-1 when Klopp first arrived, and we were 1-0 up, and they scored 2. They scored a header in about the 82nd minute, and everyone got off. The stadium was empty, and Klopp afterwards said, the stadium was deserted. I looked around and I felt really lonely. And then a few weeks later, West Brom came to Anfield, and it was under Tony Pulis, and he kicked absolute lumps out of us. And Origi scores a massively deflected 97th minute injury time equaliser. And Klopp took all the players to the Kop afterwards, and he got loads of grief from lots of people in the media, some Liverpool supporters, not many. Certainly not many who were in the ground that day, but lots of grief in the mainstream media, the sort of stuff that TalkSport love to act as though, who does he think he is? A 2-2 draw against West Brom, that's not a good result for Liverpool, etc., etc. But that was Klopp creating a covenant with the supporters, saying, "You all stayed, you all willed us on. We got this. We're all in this together." They never did it again, or only after really, really big wins. But it was a real moment of this is what togetherness is like, and that comes from a Divock Origi goal. And to think about that and then put that in the context of the Merseyside derby last week, where Divock scores yet again against Jordan Pickford with a header at the back post, as he must loom into view in a way that Pickford must find absolutely nightmarish just to nod it in from no yards out, But again, in the same way I mentioned Firmino before, but in a completely different way in practicality, because he hasn't actually played that many games or had that many minutes, like you say. Origi's underpinned this whole thing for Jurgen Klopp in a sense. Like, he's in so many of Jurgen's big moments, Divock Origi has been knocking around the place, and that is for me. Oh, there we go, wonderful stuff from Mark. That for me is what he's been about as a moment's footballer this season. Last minute winner against Wolves, makes a massive difference there against Everton, plays well in the early rounds of the League Cup. One of the reasons why we get to go all the way in that is excellent against Inter Milan at home. Was it Inter Milan? No, sorry, AC Milan at home, playing up front next to Salah. Just popped up here and there and more than shown his worth.
Interesting. I have to say, watching the game on Sunday and then when he pops up and scores, I did go onto social media and all of a sudden the NUFC hashtag was saying, yeah, I wouldn't mind Origi on a free. And I just thought it was worth asking the question from your perspective, whether you thought he was going to stay. It was an interesting one, because I think he was linked with us. And linked, with a move away in January, but I think he was injured during that period of time. So it was kind of, the decision was sort of already made that he was going to stay, because no one's going to sign him if he's currently injured at that point. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. With Diaz coming in, does it push him down the pecking order even further? Is he going to want to be, he's not playing a lot of minutes at the moment. Is he going to want to continue to sit on the bench and play maybe even less minutes in a team that, are going from strength to strength? It's definitely one to kind of to keep an eye on, that one with Divock.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Definitely. Right, I think we've got some questions, so we'll take a couple of questions while we're here.
Absolutely.
We've had quite a few in for Neil. Some of them, I'm not gonna lie, Neil. Some of them are a bit difficult to answer. One in particular, but we'll throw it at you anyway. And
be fine.
Okay, so Adam McCarthy asks, and I know we meant changes here. How many changes does Neil expect in the Liverpool team on Saturday?
So I think if there'd be one more goal against Villarreal, I would think Liverpool might be a little bit bolder in terms of sticking with the players who've brought them through this season. But Liverpool have got to be responsible. So if you were to instinctively ask me to pull a team together, and it is a difficult one. Pete asked me earlier in the day, and I was like, God knows, mate. To be honest, the goalkeeper will be the goalkeeper. I think he might do one of the fullbacks, but he won't do them both. Matip will come back in for Konate, which I think was always planned. I don't think there's anything unlikely there in that. I have a sneaking fancy. Fabinho can't play every game between now and the end of the season, and I wonder if he might give Fabinho this one off and play Henderson at the base of the midfield from the start. I think he might run Thiago all the way. I think Thiago might play every game, so I think he might go Henderson, Thiago, and Keita. And then I think he'll definitely start Salah, because I think he might run Salah as well in the same way and decide to manage his minutes from the bench. He took Mane off early, and I think he might well do Jota, because I think he may well have the instinct that it'll be the sort of game that'll be broken with a poacher's goal rather than with a quality move with some free-flowing football. So I think he may well go with Jota, Mane, Salah. So how many changes is that? That's Jota, it's Keita in for Fabinho, it's the centre-half and a full-back, so I've got 4 in total.
On the tactics board, I think I got it right, but one. So, in fact, you know what? Let me bring it up now. We'll come back
to you got on
this board in a second, but I'll put across I'll put across the team. 1 second. If you guys can see that, can you see it?
Just coming up now, Pete. There you go. Yeah, I can see it, mate.
Yeah. Oh, that's a bit big. Let me go back. There we go.
Yeah,
so,
might put two. I said he'd do a full back, so it'll either be Gomez or Shimikas in for Arnold or Robertson, I think.
right. Okay,
and it's all right. And Keita in for Fabinho, but I think the rest, I think you're on it. I think that's where we are.
Interesting. Yeah, because I thought Matip would play.
I'd be really surprised if he doesn't.
Yeah, I thought he'd play in this game. Fabinho, I thought just because he's such a crucial player for Liverpool, that I thought he would play him, because it's one of those games away from home, St James's Park. He knows he's had such tough games there before that you might need a Fabinho to kind of just solidify that midfield, knowing that potentially the likes of Joe Linton, Bruno in particular, will look to get forward and really cause moments in there. That having someone solid in there might just kind of solidify that midfield. But I went for Henderson here. Thiago, is that the formation that I've set up for Liverpool? Does that look about right?
Yeah, 4-3-3. No shadow of a doubt it'll be 4-3-3. I'd be amazed if it isn't.
Yeah. So yeah, and I went for the Jota, Salah, Mane. The Mane and Salah, they have to play. I think as soon as I saw that Mane come off against Villarreal early on, I thought they've done that because they're saving him for Saturday. They wanted to play. And Salah, he just seems like a machine. He can just play every game. He reminds me of a Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo. In his prime, he was exactly the same.
Yep.
Didn't matter whether he was playing Saturday or Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, he'd be playing it. And Salah seems like exactly the same. But I'd be shocked, Neil, if they didn't play Robertson and Trent, just because they're so crucial to the way. They are,
but I think at some point, just to be clear, so we play Everton, we played Sunday, we've gone Sunday, Wednesday, it'll be Saturday morning, then it's Tuesday again against Villarreal, so it's four difficult games, four quite stressful games in a lot of ways. That's from Sunday to a week on Tuesday. That's a lot of football to pack in, and I think you've got to manage them a little bit in that. And then from there, we play Tottenham, so there's a nice break between Villarreal and Tottenham. But then after Tottenham, it's Tottenham, and then they play Tuesday against Aston Villa again. So right. Some players have got to get a break somewhere in amongst all this. We're playing every weekend and midweek from now until the end of the season, with the exception of a week run up to the Champions League final if we qualify for it. So apart from that, every other game, because we're in the FA Cup, we're going to end, if things go as we hope in the second leg against Villarreal, we will have ended the season having played as many games as it was possible for us to play before the ball was kicked at the start of the season. So I think within that, he's got a lot of management to do just to sort of look after them. So I think he might do Shimikas for Robertson in this one. And then in Villarreal, I think he might rest Trent and play Gomez, because we're 2-0 up and you can have Trent on the bench. And if the game isn't going as you like, you've got 5 subs, so you can bring him on. So I think he might do Robertson. Robertson gets this weekend off, and then Robertson plays the Tuesday. Trent plays this, but then doesn't play the Tuesday in an ideal world, and he's only used in case of emergency. And then he's got a week's break in his legs as well. And I think there might be a little bit of that goes on across the pitch for Liverpool over the course of the next few games.
Just while the tactics board's up, Neil and Chris, jump in if you see something in the discussion. So I'm going to just raise the point that Tom's here, and I'm going to slightly change it. So he's put, who will Liverpool's main threat on Saturday, or who will Liverpool's main threat be on Saturday? Well, I think he's maybe referring who do you think Newcastle's biggest threat will be? But I'll kind of add to that. So who do you think Newcastle's biggest threat will be for you, and where on the pitch do you think we could best exploit Liverpool?
So everyone always tries to play in the space between Trent and Matip, and that seems like one for Saint-Maximin to have a little look at and see if they can put some pressure on him down there. Trent's a better one-on-one defender than he's given credit for. I think he's all right at that. And I think the other thing is Liverpool have sort of turned this into a bit of an inverse strength, because if you want to keep playing the ball that way and you want to keep attacking that side, well, we'll end up with Henderson over there, we'll end up with Salah over there, and then when we win it back, we can turn and go. And I actually think the propensity for people to go that way, I understand why, because ultimately no one really wants to go one-on-one with Virgil. You don't want to play into Virgil's area because you think, well, he's that good, so I'm not going to get anything. But I actually think the more defending you make Virgil do, the more likely it is that you're going to knock Liverpool out of the stride. You know, I think it suits Virgil to have a view of the game and to step in when he's needed. I think the idea of making Virgil van Dijk busy is something else entirely. Now, it's a riskier strategy in that Virgil could just be what he is, which is the best centre-half on the planet. And you could be that you don't get anywhere. But I think that the more, you know, I thought that you saw it, and they're obviously a hell of a side, but, you know, the Etihad game recently where first half, Van Dijk was rattled, and Van Dijk's very rarely rattled. So I think that that's a thing. And then I think what you're also looking at is the idea of the threat of runners off the back of our midfield, 2-8. So the two that you've got there, where you've got Bruno and Joe Linton knocking around with Henderson and Thiago. If you can do that well against us and join and pick your moments, then you're in good shape. But so much of, I mean, a lot of football, full stop, but so much of football as it is now is risk versus reward. The best thing to sort of do against Liverpool, I'd argue, is challenge them for bottle. You want to push your fullbacks on, you want to push your centre mids on, absolutely fine. But we're gonna look to get into the spaces in behind you. But if you do that, you can open yourself up, and you might not be defending with enough numbers. But if you want to turn it into a game against Liverpool, that's something that you can do, and you might not come off better for it. But the flip side of that is, well, you know, if you sit in and you try to play really conservatively, we might, you know, this is a general we versus you. I'm not talking specifically about Newcastle, but we might just go and win the game anyway. So I think trying to find your way to have a go, no matter what it is, no matter what area it is, I think it's just really important. Everton go badly wrong in the end because they only gave themselves one really basic out. And I think if you're playing against Liverpool, you need to have 3 or 4 ways that you're going to get out and get up the pitch for a period of time. And it's the same playing against Manchester City. Sides that either just try to sit in and have one runner, it doesn't quite work. You've got to have 2 or 3 points of attack, so there's an unpredictability there, and then you can just change it up as and when you need to, and that's, you know, that's something that I think can work for sides. But you've got to be brave to do that, and the bravery is the bit where everyone gets, you know, obviously everyone worries.
I think you've made a fantastic point, and I think your point that you made. So I think you said, is it risk over bottle? You may have mentioned or something along those lines. I think when you said that, I thought, you know what, you're absolutely right, Neil, and actually, and I think Chris, you'll probably agree with me as well with this point, is that that's exactly the type of football Eddie Howe's been playing right now at Newcastle United. I'll go back to the Leicester game, for example. I referred to the fact that, you know, we pushed on ASM, Joe Linton, Bruno and Miggy in that game, and we put pressure on ourselves in defensive positions, because at times Target and Kraft were having to mark 2 men. You know, they had the winger and the centre midfielder or the fullback attacking down that side, and they were having to deal with 2 men. And to be fair, they dealt with it very, very well. And our defensive solidity recently, apart from at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, has actually been really, really good. Where I think is going to be interesting, and, you know, Chris, jump in at any point, I think this is going to be quite an interesting battle just here, because I actually think, and you've touched on Virgil van Dijk, and, you know, make him defend more, you know, to create maybe a mistake in him. I think Virgil van Dijk in a lot of games gets quite an easy pass, because of the reason that you said, Neil, in that actually strikers, what they do, they'll drop on Matip or whoever else is playing centre back, and what they'll do is think that that's an easier battle. But what it does, it makes it easier for Van Dijk to sweep up and just control the game at feet. I think Wood is the type of striker. We talked about it on our show last night with Mitch, one of our one of our Newcastle fans. We were talking about how Wood is the type of player that, he's not blessed with pace. He's not a prolific goal scorer, but what he does, he occupies the 2 centre backs. I actually think at times in the game on Saturday, he's going to pull on Van Dijk, and he's going to try and create a problem for Van Dijk. Why? Because it takes him out the game. And if he can hold up the ball and make things happen and occupy Van Dijk, it allows Joe Linton and Bruno Guimaraes to get in and behind. And I think that could be a key part of the game, where Wood will play that role to try and disrupt Van Dijk in order to allow us to get forward. Chris, I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, no, I was just listening to you talk, and obviously looking at the tactics board, and I think some really good points have been made. I mean, Neil, you were mentioning before, you know, about the misconception that Trent is weaker in defence, and he's the kind of guy that you want to aim at. And it was funny because when I was watching the derby, during the game, I noticed Trent was having quite a bit of joy against Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon was running at him, and you're quite right. Whenever it was one-on-one, Trent just dealt with it. And I thought, I thought Trent had a good game, actually. I thought he did well. And it was interesting because at the start of the second half in the derby, Everton it was as if Frank Lampard had said, right, come on, we've got to have a go here, because we can't just defend as they were. I mean, the first half, it was literally the ball was just camped in the Everton half because Liverpool were just pressing. And then all of a sudden you saw Everton, as you were talking about earlier, Neil, about being a bit braver, having a bit more bottle. And then obviously they were unpicked towards the end. 2 fantastic substitutions by Klopp. But I totally agree with you, Pete, in terms of Chris Woods. I think his role in the game at the weekend is going to be key. I think he's gonna be trying to distract and occupy Virgil van Dijk and Matip as much as possible to give the attacking midfielders as many opportunities as they can, or gaps to get in there. I suppose the key battle for me, anyway, looking at it, is probably Jordan Henderson. And I agree with Neil. I think Jordan Henderson will play, especially given his Sunderland links. I think you're always going to get that little bit extra out of him because he's going to want to win this game more than any other game, no doubt. And Jordan Henderson often gets a lot of stick, doesn't he? Whenever Liverpool play Newcastle, but I think there's going to be a big battle going on. And I'll be honest, if Fabinho's not playing at the weekend, I will feel much better about it. But that's not to say Liverpool haven't got more than enough in reserve, because I know they have. What I wanted to ask you, Neil, how impressed have you been with Keita this year? Because I know we were talking at the very start of the show, weren't we, about Luis Diaz, and he's come in and he's made an impact.
Yeah.
I know with Keita, it's been a bit more of a slow burner. But do you think, have you seen big improvements from Keita this season?
Yeah, I think he's been. I think he's firstly he's had a run of fitness, and that makes a big difference. I think secondly, he's just looked more settled with himself and more settled with his team. To be honest with you, and what he's done, I said before about Liverpool, we've got 5 forwards to pick from at the minute. We've got more than that. There's Origi and Minamino, or even Chamberlain could play there. But my point is more, it feels like Liverpool are picking from a pool of 5, and then picking 3. Keita's turned the midfield of Henderson, Fabinho and Thiago into a situation where it's actually Henderson, Fabinho, Thiago and Keita. It's 3 from 4 in there at the minute. He starts Keita against Manchester City at the FA Cup semi-final, and he gets his reward for it. Keita's absolutely tremendous for the first half. I think loses himself a teeny little bit in the second half as Liverpool's intensity drops collectively. But for the first 45 minutes, he was genuinely outstanding in that game. And, for me, I like him a great deal. I've liked Keita as a player for a while. He's one who I think he sort of, he finds he struggles to occasionally just get his role. It's not about his quality, it's about precisely what his role is, I think. But at the minute, he looks in great shape, and he looks like he's more than able to play his part from now until the end of the season. And if Liverpool do we've already got one final on the horizon, the FA Cup final. If we make the Champions League final, I wouldn't be surprised if Keita started either of the 2 finals, possibly ahead of Henderson. I wouldn't go, that's mad if that happened. I wouldn't think it was unlikely. I think it's as likely as anything else that, I think he will pick 3 from 4, and it'll be down to who the opposition is, who he thinks can best sort of cope in that scenario. What Henderson gives you is the ability to switch play, to speed it up. He's brilliant at tempo, Henderson, on and off the ball. He's more than happy to play passes that look speculative, but they're about turning the opposition round and making them panic and making them defend against Liverpool's front 3, and then being part of what sweeps up the bits. And suddenly Liverpool, without actually having played that accurate a first ball, are 30 yards from the opposition goal, and the opposition are in disarray. And that is what Henderson's really, really good at. And that's why, that's one of the things he brings. Whereas it is fair to say that I think Keita is a slightly more sort of surgical footballer. Henderson can be, and I mean this completely as a compliment, can be a bit of a hammer over and over again during games, whereas Keita's more you pick the lock type. Henderson's got a bit of that, and Keita's got a bit of the other. But I think that's what works. That's what works for Liverpool.
It's that switch ball there, that Mane switch ball into that area there for Henderson. He loves that that switch ball. It's always on, and he's got that ability. And to be fair, we have our own switch ball passer in the middle here. And look, us Newcastle fans have not talked about him very positively in recent years, but certainly under Eddie Howe, he is certainly, he's changed his game, and he's become quite a prominent figure in this team, sitting this deep in that sort of number 6 role. And he is in a position where he likes to play that switch ball, and he'll equally, if Trent is coming up this way, and we talked about it before, ASM will look to make that run. And actually, in recent weeks, that ball has been happening a lot more often, but ASM's been making that run and the switchboard in there very similar to Henderson in there. So it'll be interesting to see, how that gets on. Obviously, you've got Bruno that can play the ball on the ground, and he likes to control possession, and he'll control sort of this area. He'll drift left to right, predominantly on the right, but he'll drift left to right to try and get on the ball. And Shelby will try and bring things in from deep. So, I mean, do you think like, look, I don't know if you've already talked about this when I was off, but what have you made of Bruno Guimaraes so far in a Newcastle United shirt?
I think he looks really bright. One of the things that's interesting is that the manager didn't rush into him, which makes me think he had a very specific role for him, and he wanted him to learn how to play that and play with his teammates. And that, again, shows planning and forethought. He was the biggest signing, the most significant signing, I think, in terms of the long term for Newcastle in the winter. But he's not rushed it. How? And that means I think he's got a plan around precisely what he wants, and he sees him as part of the long-term future of the club. I think he looks, firstly, he snaps into tackles. He looks like he can read the gate of the ball as to where interceptions are, anticipates where the bits are quite nicely, and carries it. And I think that's something which, to have that through the middle of the park is very, very useful. Looks, as though he can go both ways, which always helps as well. And I think he looks really bright. I think that all the time at the minute for Newcastle, it is going to be this difference between what's for now, what's for later, and what's for both. Yeah. And he looks emphatically like one for both. And I think that's something which, will have to be thought through with each of these moves. Not least to go back to what I said before, the one thing for loads of reasons, not just financial or not just from the look and feel of the thing, but you don't want to end up with a bloated squad with 6 or 7 slightly disgruntled lads who are just turning up to collect a paycheck. I think you need to feel as though everyone's going to feel involved. So what you don't want to do is end up with too many footballers who may need to be moved on at some point. I think it's got to be a process of a certain in that. And I think that, the Newcastle thing with an eye on next season is, I think that Joe Linton and Bruno look more than capable of being lads who can play in those positions for a team that's got genuine aspirations of finishing top 6. And I think that as a move, that's not to say that, they should play every game, because it will be a squad game next season, as I said before about the schedule. But the idea, if Newcastle could get themselves one more of them who can play in those sorts of advanced roles ahead of a holding midfielder, then you end up in a situation where, you're picking 2 of them every week, you're in good shape, because you can continually keep the other one fresh and just sort of rotate those minutes between them. And I think that can work for Newcastle, and I think that having energy in that part of the pitch and having freshness in that part of the pitch is very, very important.
I agree 100%. Just one last point from me on the tactics board is Miggy. Miggy's relationship with Bruno at the moment is very, very strong on the pitch. Fully expect Miggy to push Robinson this way. He's got absolutely dynamic pace in and behind. He will run all day, and Bruno's got that ball to find in and behind. So just something to keep an eye on there. But obviously, the pace and the movement and Jota in and around Shaw alongside Mane and Salah is something we're going to need to keep an eye on if we're going to stop Liverpool from scoring goals on Saturday. But Chris, anything from you tactically before we move on?
I don't think so, mate. It's just one thing that it has interested me, and obviously I'm aware of this, and Neil's already alluded to it. The fact that our teams do play very similar now, which I never thought I'd say, but it's good. That we're both progressive. We're both going to be looking on the front foot. I hope that we don't just camp. I really do hope that we don't revert to 5 at the back, and I hope that we do have a go at Liverpool. Albeit, I know we've got to be cautious, and we can't just go gung ho, because, as Neil's already said, Liverpool on the day are one of the best in Europe, if not the world. So you can't just attack this team and just expect to get goals. You've got to be careful going back. But as he rightly said, if you attack Liverpool and give them things to worry about at the other end of the pitch, it might put them off their flow and put them off their game a touch. Because as we've seen, if you sit back, Liverpool will break you down eventually.
Yeah, definitely, and we saw that in the Everton game. They were always going to break Everton down, and I think Everton knew it. Everton, I think, was surprised with how long they hung on. And it ended up being the case that Liverpool got their goals and were quite comfortable in the end with getting the points. But that's it from the tactics board right now. Just before we move on to the next phase, obviously we've just mentioned Everton right there. Obviously they're your big rivals in Merseyside. Just a quick point on them. Do you think they're going down this season?
Yeah. I've had my eye on it for some time, to be honest with you. There was things weren't right all the way back in November, and I thought they're in a bit more bother than they think here, the Blues. And I think they've been in corporately and professionally, I think they've been in a bit of denial for a while about the scale of the problem and the mismanagement that's been going on there. And that mismanagement, by the way, continued into January. I would love to know precisely who's benefited from the Anwar El Ghazi deal, taking him on loan from Villa to Everton, because it's not Everton and it's not Anwar El Ghazi. So, exactly what's gone on there is one for an investigative journalist to have a little look at, I'd argue. And Dele Alli was another mad thing. That one was Bill Kenwright supposedly hammering out a strange deal with Daniel Levy, which could well leave Everton in a situation next season where if they were to go down, they probably wouldn't want to play him because at some point the number of appearances triggers a £20 million transfer fee on the one hand, but on the other hand they'd have to keep paying his wages unless they could get him off the books. And to sign yourself up to that sort of deal for a footballer is, when we're in the situation Everton were in then, and this is the key thing, they were flirting with relegation then, is tantamount to madness, to be quite honest with you. And especially it's the sort of thing that stupid people think is clever, and that's what they managed to do. So I think they are in a lot of bother. I think the defining game actually is not Everton's at the weekend coming. Burnley go to Watford, and if Burnley beat Watford at 3:00 on Saturday, they're 5 points clear of Everton.
That's right.
And when you're down there, 5 points is huge. And then Everton's still got a couple of games in hand. But the reason why you're at the bottom of the table and not at the top is because you're not winning games. So your games in hand are lovely in theory, but they're not the same as points. And then they've got Chelsea the next day, Everton. And if Burnley win this weekend and Chelsea beat Everton, then I think the mountain begins to look really, really big indeed. And I think the more reality dawns, the harder Everton find it.
I have to agree. It's a very, very difficult situation for Everton, and I cannot help but think that they are in a very similar position that we've been in a couple of times, 2009 and I think 2016, 16, sorry, in which we went down twice with players and individual quality players that shouldn't really have been relegated, but we got ourselves into a moment where we thought we weren't going to get relegated, and it then became too late, and they couldn't unravel that. And I think Chris, me and you had a chat about it, and we were kind of talking about how certain players maybe are already thinking of moves away, already thinking of moving on from Everton, rather than actually focusing on the battle to stay in the league. And in particular, two players that I'll highlight are the two players that are likely to keep him in the league that I think are already looking elsewhere, and that's their two strikers in Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison. We've already heard that there's been a lot of agent talk about them trying to orchestrate moves away. But the Dele Alli situation is interesting for me. I don't know what you think, and Chris, I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think Dele Alli, if Everton go down, could be another Jack Rodwell, in that he holds on to the club and sucks literally all the money out of that club because he doesn't want to move on because of the type of contract he's on?
Potentially he could, yeah. I mean, you'd like to think that he wouldn't do that. But I'm sure most people would have thought the same about Jack Rodwell as well. I mean, they tried every angle possible, Sunderland, to get rid of Jack Rodwell, and he just wouldn't leave. With Dele Alli, maybe he's got a bit more pride. I think there's certainly a lot more talent there, and he probably could get a move elsewhere. But as Neil rightly said, they've tied themselves into this huge financial deal, and it's whether or not Everton can offload him. And even if they can't, they're going to lose a hell of a lot of money in doing so. Obviously, they'll save on his wages, but then they will have to then try and recoup as much money as they can, and then probably still owe Tottenham some kind of money in the process. So it's going to be difficult for them. But you're absolutely right as well, Pete, when you talk about Richarlison and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Dominic Calvert-Lewin especially. I know that he's recently been declared injured, and he's missing. He's been missing the last couple of games, and I think he's going to miss a few more games. And all you keep hearing is rumours of Dominic Calvert-Lewin moving elsewhere, and Richarlison to a degree in the same breath. And these are the kind of rumours that you don't want when you're in the battle that Everton are in right now. It's not helpful. But it does concern me that we do keep hearing these rumours, and I wonder where they're coming from. I'm assuming it's the agent, but it could well be the players kind of touting themselves out, knowing full well that they are only going one place, and that's the Championship.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very interesting next few weeks watching Everton unfold. Really, I think from a Newcastle United point of view, I think there are a lot of fans that would like Everton to go down. I think because there's been a bit of stick with regards to our takeover, a lot of Everton fans have had a lot to say about the Newcastle takeover. And I think at this point now it's kind of turned itself around. That Everton in the point of relegation, so Newcastle fans are saying, "Well, you were quick to talk about us and our takeover. We'll now talk about you in the fact that you're going down." So I think we're kind of getting our own back really from that perspective.
I think Everton could have done with having more of a conversation about their own takeover in 2015-16. Frankly.
Exactly.
Genuinely, without saying anything that could get this fine video into legal difficulties, there is, Everton have had to suspend partnerships because people connected to them have ended up on a sanctions list in the last few months. Moral high grounds are difficult in football, but at the moment, Everton have got none.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I don't know if you guys watched the Sky program. When they have the fans on. From all different clubs. The Everton fan, and I can't remember, it might be Toffee's TV, the guy that they have on there. The way in which he talks about Newcastle is so disrespectful, and it's almost coming across like he is just angry at the fact that we've got this takeover, and it almost just makes me smile because
a lot of fans are angry, Pete. A lot of fans are angry, honest to God. Like Neil will tell you, well, maybe Neil won't know as much, but I certainly do. A lot of Everton fans I speak to are just angry, and that's the best way to describe it. I keep getting warned about FFP, or I hope you don't, get sanctioned by FFP and stuff like that. And they've spent 500 million on signings, and they're in the position they're in.
£500 million. £500 million. How can you spend £500 million and be fighting relegation with 6 games to go?
It's nil satis nisi optimum. It is what the Blues do and what they're about. Genuinely, I can talk. I've got my own views on takeovers and who should or shouldn't own football clubs. But that list of who should or shouldn't own football clubs and why they end up owning football clubs and then what they do with football clubs would also include a very heavy conversation about the Everton owner and what he's done since he's been in charge and where things have gone and all that sort of stuff. For me, it's they're not really in a position to have that conversation at the moment, I'd argue, other than, unless they're very much put their own club in the dock as well.
Definitely. And look, Julie Tune for Life is exactly right. And I know Chris will agree with that point as well. He nodded his head when that comment came up. Neil, you talk a lot of sense and you really do. And this is why we do away days. This is why we do this show, is because we love getting the opposition's point of view on not just their own club in yourself in Liverpool, but also on Newcastle, but also on football in general. Because although we are mad Newcastle fans, we love to get the perspective from the opposition. We love to get the perspective on other clubs that are going on, and it's a great discussion. And so many points that you've made tonight, Neil, are absolutely spot on with various other clubs as well as Liverpool, as well as Newcastle, and obviously we're talking about Everton now, and maybe we've got a mutual dislike for Everton, so it kind of helps in that situation. But
it's common ground.
Yeah, of course. We'll always. I think we'll always have that common ground moving forward, because the one thing that Newcastle fans don't do is they never ever forget. We never forgot about Aston Villa when we got relegated the first time, and we've always kept that negativity on the back of that. We never forgot about some of the negativity in the run-up to us getting promoted back to the Premier League with Brighton. We've never forgot that, and obviously the comments that we've had this year, even before the takeover. The issue with Everton fans with Newcastle goes before October the 7th, 2021. It goes before the takeover happened. They were making comments about Newcastle United on the shows on Sky right at the beginning of the season. You know, talking disrespectfully about us. This goes a long way back, and it's only heightened in the fact that we've got this takeover. And yeah, they are 100% jealous because they know their owners. They probably won't say it openly, but they know their owners have done a horrific job with their club, and actually, them going down could mean that they go down even further because they're going to have the money really to get themselves back. They could sell half of their squad, but it might not fill the gap. It might not fill the void in their club, and they're in a real difficult position. But look, we'll be watching as we're kind of like sitting back and enjoying Neil, your title race, and us, our future, looking to go in the right direction. But just at this point now, I think maybe it's time for some stats. So there's only one way we do this on away days on Loaded HQ, and it's about 00 Statter.
Evening, lads.
And just like magic, he appears. How you doing, Keith?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks, Pete. Hope you're all well.
Good, mate.
Very good, very good. And look, we're looking at potentially, is it 7 games, home games in a row? Hopefully, you've maybe got some stats that are going to give us a little bit of confidence that we might get that result. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking Steven Gerrard, and maybe not. But let's see what you come up with tonight.
Absolutely, there's been some horror shows in this fixture as far as Newcastle are concerned, but I'll try and keep it as much on an even keel as possible. I've got lots of stats here, some head-to-head stats at the start, then some general Premier League stats for both sides, some stats on the managers, and then a few on the players. So I'll start off head-to-head. Newcastle's record against Liverpool in the Premier League, 93-94. They've played 53 games, won 11, drawn 12, and lost 30 to Liverpool. There's always goals in this fixture, though, so that's a positive. The last goalless draw between these two sides was way back in 1970. The number of goals in this fixture in the Premier League era is 165, 108 for Liverpool, and 57 for Newcastle. And also Liverpool have got the better defensive record in this fixture, 16 clean sheets to Newcastle's 8. Newcastle haven't won in their last 10 Premier League games against Liverpool. 4 draws and 6 defeats. And the last time that Newcastle won this fixture back in 2015-16 with Genie Wijnaldum scoring the second goal in the 90th minute. General head-to-heads, general Premier League stats in this fixture. Liverpool are unbeaten in 4 away games against Newcastle at St James's Park, which Neil touched on earlier, I think, in the recent fixtures. The only time Liverpool have bettered that and went 5 unbeaten at St James's was way back in the 1960s. So there's a little bit of confidence there, Pete. Liverpool, though, are on a 14-game unbeaten run in the Premier League, which we're all aware of, and 22 in domestic cup competitions. The last defeat was when they lost 1-0 to Pete's Leicester City at the King Power Stadium.
They're not
over
my
the
Leicester
Christmas
City.
period.
I only live in the city. I'm not a Leicester fan.
You must have heard the roar from the King Power though, Pete, from nearby.
What, when Roma scored?
Yeah. Nice one. Newcastle have won 4 Premier League games in a row, Pete. You'd like that one. With clean sheets, 3 clean sheets in that run. The last time that Newcastle won 5 Premier League games in a row was back in November 2014, which also included a 1-0 win against Liverpool. Managers head-to-head. Jurgen Klopp's record as a Liverpool manager against Newcastle: played 11, won 6, drawn 4, and lost 1. But Eddie Howe, his record against Liverpool, managed 14 games. He's won 1, he's drawn 1, and he's lost 12. So not as strong there.
No.
The most common goal scorers against Newcastle: Mo Salah with 6 and Sadio Mane with 4. And this season, these stats, I mean, how I wish we could have some of this. Liverpool's top goal scorers this season: Mo Salah, 30. Competitions: Diego Jota, 21, and Sadio Mane, 20.
Wow.
And Chris Wood, I know you touched on it earlier, and he's got that area ability. He's got chances to create problems for Liverpool. I hope that he will end his goalless streak against Liverpool, because Chris Wood is yet to score against Liverpool. No goals in 10 games. So let's hope that ends on Saturday afternoon. Alice, a bit on the goalkeepers as well, just to finish off here. Alisson, remarkable season, another remarkable season. 19 clean sheets in Premier League games for Liverpool this year, compared to Martin Dubravka, again, who hasn't featured all season, but he has 7 clean sheets for Newcastle this year. And that rounds off the stats.
So there's a lot that goes against us, but there's one or two little nuggets that kind of keep us relatively positive. But yeah, I would have to say it certainly goes in the favour of Liverpool. But as we always say, stats and records are there to be broken, and you never know kind of what is going to happen on the day. And look, the one thing I'll say, and Chris, I'll get your feelings on this, is that, we are a very, very different Newcastle United now than what we were in previous years under Mike Ashley, in terms of the fans, in the way we're feeling, the mentality of not just the fans, the manager, but the player and the owners. We've got a chance, surely.
Yeah, I think we've got a chance. And again, like we were talking about earlier, Pete, we go into this game more to... we've said before, I personally, I see it as a bit of a litmus test to see kind of where we are playing against the best. You want to play against the best, and we go into the game with no fear, because thankfully we've managed to get ourselves safe now. So the pressure isn't there. I mean, everyone expects us to get beat, and I think it's probably fair to assume that we are coming up against a fantastic Liverpool team. But there's no fear there where we're panicking. We're not looking over our shoulders anymore. We're trying to look forwards. We're trying to get as high up the table as we can.
I think in general, you don't get many football matches that are like test matches, like sort of an old school variant on the way sport works, where you get to test yourself and see how good you are. And I think that's what the way Newcastle should look at this weekend and the following weekend against Manchester City. I hasten to add, the idea of being able to say, afterwards, get the video and say, all right, well, what worked for us and what didn't? What do we need to sharpen up on for next season? What's a little bit different? You just don't get many of them in Premier League football, because so many games always feel as though they've got so much riding on it. So I agree with that, Chris, and I think it's an excellent way to look at it. Is that this will be something Newcastle can use this as whatever happens in either of these 2 games, and they've got every chance of taking points off both sides, I would argue, but it's also for those players, for everyone who's involved, an opportunity to say, okay, this is what we learned from this. There'll be stuff that they learned from the Chelsea game, frankly. There'll be stuff that, you learn from this, and you realise where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, what you need to do a little bit different in fixtures like this one. And as I say, you don't get that many of them, not least because you're going to get Liverpool, whatever Liverpool go on the pitch. They need to win the game. It's not like Liverpool are on the wind down at the end of the season. Liverpool are, whatever they choose to do, Liverpool are going for it wholeheartedly, and that's going to be massive.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, definitely. Neil, I know our our time's coming to an end with you, but I know that, that there's a few in the chat that have thrown some questions at you. So just before you go, let's see if we can.
I'll be brief as well. I'll be concise.
Yeah, no,
we'll get through them all.
We'll throw a few questions at you before we let you leave. Let's see what we've got. Chris,
I've got one here, Pete.
Looking at them, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got them ready.
Go for
But yeah,
it,
I'll throw these questions at Neil. Okay, so Jordy Tune for Life asks Neil, do you think that, I know you spoke about this briefly at the start of the show, but is this the hardest game in the running? I know you play Spurs, but I don't think they can cope with your press.
I think that Spurs could turn it on and really hurt us. But ultimately, I think the 3 away games in each of their own way are going to be really difficult for us. Southampton will be really pleased just to take any points off us. Villa have got the Gerrard factor plus the Coutinho factor plus another couple of factors, and Newcastle are in the best form of those 3. I think ultimately, if we're going to slip up, I think it will be away from home. I think the home crowd will carry us through difficult moments in the other games. So yeah, ultimately, I think it's joint our toughest because I think that all 3 of the aways are tough.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. Trippier for Prime Minister says, is Neil worried about Liverpool's aging squad and that Liverpool may not be able to compete at the same level in a few years as a result? There are a number of players who are approaching 30, and that will be hard to replace.
I think that on that you've got to pick your battles on those ones as to which ones you're hanging on to and which ones you're looking to sort of backfill. We mentioned before Diaz and Jota, and they've done a bit of that. Liverpool's average age this season is 28.1 on the minutes played against 27.2 as the league average, but that's slightly skewed by the existence of James Milner and the fact that he's 36. Thiago and Henderson are both 31, but you think that their minutes will be split between them as we move beyond this season a little bit. And then within that, there's Matip, Mane, Firmino, and Van Dijk, who are all 30, will be around forever. I think Matip will see his contract out at Liverpool and then he'll move out on a free. We never paid anything for him in the first place. Salah's turning 30 in the summer, but he looks in phenomenal nick, and you've only got to see that Real Madrid this season have got a group of players of a certain age. So I think Liverpool just got to be smart and pick the battles. It's not an idea, I think, of the idea you keep going with all of them. I think that's why I think Firmino leaves at the end of his contract. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody else leaves at the end of their contract. Matip will leave at the end of his contract. Milner will probably go this summer, and then it's a matter of sort of having the replacements, the conveyor belt to come through. And when I said before, I think Liverpool will buy 2 midfielders in the summer. I think they'll both be under 23. And they'll be really physically impressive.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, when's Matip's contract out?
24, I think. So he's still got another couple of seasons.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Tom Dixon asks, Neil, do you think you will win the league this season with it being so tight?
Yes, I think City are going to slip up. And I think when they slip up, I think they'll slip up twice, to be honest with you. I think there's a scoreboard pressure element that can be heaped on City in a couple of occasions. Listen, in 18-19, they did brilliantly and got all the way to the line against us. I just don't think they're quite as imperious, and they haven't got a centre-forward like Sergio Aguero as they had back then. And I think that, Sergio Aguero in the 2018-19 season, he started every game but one from the 20th of January for Manchester City. They got him off really early in those games. They would take him off when they felt the game was won on the hour mark and wrap him up in cotton wool. But he played and played and played and played because that threat helps. I think City can be frustrated at the minute, and I think when you play them next weekend, if Newcastle could get to the 60th minute mark, even in the Etihad, and if it was still 0-0, I'd really be paying attention to that and thinking you can get something from them. There are sides, I think there's 2 cities at the minute. There's the one before 60 minutes and there's the one after 60 minutes in matches, and the further, the deeper any team can take them into games, including Leeds this weekend, the more I think they can hurt them.
Yeah. Interesting. No, I think that's true, mate. Tom Dixon also asks, and I wanted to ask you this myself actually, do you think Mo Salah will leave Liverpool? And I wanted to ask you, Neil, I know there's been a delay with his contract. Do you think, I've heard it's down to the amount of years that Liverpool want to give him and that Mo Salah wants? So how do you see that panning out?
I think that everyone will come to a compromise on that, and it wouldn't surprise me if Klopp's contract is actually part of that, because now Mo Salah knows who the Liverpool manager is going to be until 2026. And I think that may well be the thing that tips this thing over the line and it gets resolved, possibly before the end of the season.
Yeah. Jordy Toonflying also asks, would Neil agree the Premier League is harder to win than the Champions League? And he's got to admit that Liverpool are fantastic to watch.
Excellent. Do I think, I think that ultimately the question is, can you beat Manchester City? And the thing about that is you can feel as though City will get over 90 points in any given Premier League season. That feels like a fair assumption, and that's something that's never been the case before. Whereas then it's easier to beat City in either a two-legged or a one-off game, obviously, and eliminate them. So that's sort of the question. But there's a reason why Manchester City have never won the Champions League. Ask them that, because they're still waiting for the first one. So I think ultimately Guardiola is incredible at coaching elite footballers to win league titles. He's incredible. You look at his record at Bayern, look at his record at Barcelona. He's incredible at game-changing league points totals. So what we're actually asking is it harder to beat Guardiola in a league competition than it is to win the Champions League? And I think at the moment it might just about be. But then Pep Guardiola himself would probably rather be winning a couple more Champions Leagues.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair to say, mate. Tom Dixon asks, how long do you think it will be till James Milner calls it a day?
Never. 83, still plugging away. Fittest man in the squad.
This was the awkward one I was talking about, Neil, and obviously it'd be interesting to get your perspective on it. But why do you think Liverpool wanted to go into the European Super League?
I think you can have this conversation in a number of different ways. So the very cynical and correct answer is because they wanted to feel as though they could guarantee themselves consistent European football at the very highest level, year in, year out. But I think there's still a bit more to it than that. That is both true, but I think the thinking on it was greater and deeper than that. I think Liverpool, in a number of ways, I think first and foremost, Liverpool feel as though the more Liverpool at a boardroom corporate level, in fact, above Liverpool's boardroom in a sense, that the ownership group feel, I think, as though ultimately the more the game is purely done on who's the smartest and who best organises and who does the business, the more likely they are to win in a European sense. So I think one of the reasons why Liverpool would like that would have been to have greater regulation around the game and the way in which it operates and the way in which money's spent. Because I think Liverpool feel as though the fairer the game is, the more likely they are to win it. Whether they're right to think that or not is a separate conversation, but I think that's what Liverpool think. I think the other thing that Liverpool also think, or that, again, Fenway Sports Group thought, was you all love European football. You love playing Barcelona. Why don't you just want to do that guaranteed every year? And I think that in general, this is something which executives of football clubs miss out. The idea that what we actually love is jeopardy, and we love the rarity of big games, and we love the surprise of big games, and we love when a big game becomes a big game. But big games only matter when there's things riding on them, when there's a huge amount of jeopardy. And what the whole Super League plan did was both for domestic football, because it wasn't going to replace domestic football, but it meant that domestic football had a lot less riding on it on the one hand, but also the idea of a Super League itself. Imagine a situation where there's 16 teams, say, in a European Super League, but ultimately by sort of game 14 of the season, it's quite clear that only 3 teams can win it, and no one can get relegated. So why on earth is everyone trying? Because there's, you've removed jeopardy. So you could say, well, there's prize money or professional pride, but why am I watching? Because ultimately, why am I engaged? Jeopardy is what makes football great. And so I think that was a really naive move, but I think Liverpool thought that. And there's a third thing that I think Liverpool are desperate to see achieved, because it was also in Project Big Picture, which is I think Liverpool, and I think there's a really strong argument for it, I hasten to add, so this isn't me, I'm not criticising Liverpool's ownership on this. I think Liverpool would quite like to be able to screen their own games to their own supporters in a worldwide sense through their own channel. Yeah. And I think that Liverpool feel as though, certainly for Saturday 3 p.m s and for games like that, they should have the ability to be able to basically sell LFC TV and get millions of people all over the world subscribe to LFC TV to see some Liverpool games. And I think that's quite an interesting philosophical argument, to be honest with you, in terms of what for your viewers, listeners, whichever way they feel on that. I don't think that's as cut and dried as is that right or is that wrong. For me, I think it's philosophically unsustainable, for instance, that 3 p.m s in this country can only be watched. If Liverpool go to Crystal Palace and it kicks off at 3 p.m, only 3,000 Liverpool supporters can legally watch it. That's mad. When we actually break it down like that, that's mad. Yeah. So is there an argument that club channels should be able to screen Saturday 3 p.m s? Can you make that argument? And I think you can. And I think that's quite a coherent one. without sort of undermining lower league football, if there was greater sort of also distribution of the money to lower league football as well from the game from top to bottom from the Premier League, then I think you can make an argument. Well, let's do that. Let's bring that about. But I think that media rights is something Liverpool are really, really interested in and will remain interested in. And if you want to get John Henry, who's Liverpool's principal owner's attention in a meeting, the thing you'd say is, this is how we revolutionise football media rights, because I think that's the thing that a lot of people who are owning football from the point of view of wanting to profit from it are hanging in on.
Yeah.
It's a long answer, but there's lots in it.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Really, really interesting. And you made a number of good points. I'll just raise one of them about the 3 p.m. kickoffs. The fact that I saw the other day that they're considering that blackout being squashed for the English Football League. So, but obviously below the Premier League, they're looking at maybe just discussing that. And I think that's with a view to eventually having that blackout removed for the Premier League as well, for the reasons that you've just said.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you were to ask me to rebuild English football, and I've done some writing around this, you could quite easily just no longer have Premier League games at 3 o'clock on a Saturday and screen either all Premier League games or a wider selection of them, or allow the idea of people being able to opt for which one they watch. But for me, I think it genuinely is, like, it's crazy. I once watched, the reason the Crystal Palace example, I was once on a plane flying back from Tokyo to Manchester, and I watched Crystal Palace 1, Liverpool 2 on the plane through a German TV broadcast on the plane. It was legal. It was coming through the plane screen. And literally someone who sits in Liverpool, has a Liverpool season ticket, who loves the Reds, legally couldn't have done the same thing as me.
Yeah.
And that's mad. Like, it's mad. It's not just a big, it's really, really strange. And the fact that it is clung to as an article of faith from people who support, who view themselves as acting in the interests of supporters in this country, to me, it's really, really, it is a question of, well, whose interests? Because I know what I want to do. I want to watch the team I support, and I pay a fair bit of money to do that. And I can't get to every away game. And also, that comes with a huge amount of cost as well. It's strange you're saying to me you can't watch that legally. That's a really strange, and you shouldn't be able to, is a really strange and unsustainable position.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. I've only got a few more, by the way, Neil. Just dead quick. These are quick ones for you. Yeah. Tom Dixon asks, do you think Oxlade-Chamberlain will leave in the summer?
Yes.
Nice, easy one. Tom Dixon also asked. Yeah, he would, to be fair. Yeah, he would. Question for you: what is, if you like, your favourite and most memorable game between Liverpool and Newcastle?
I think my favourite is probably the 3-2 where Origi scores. To be honest, it was the most stressed. It was genuinely amongst the most stressed I've ever been watching a game of football. And it's not an exaggeration. Like, I'm and the people around me. There was 2 people I was watching it with. I didn't go. There was 2 people I was watching it with. 1 man and 1 woman. There was about 12 of us all together who congregated to watch it. 2 people were in tears at one point. 1 person sat on the floor and faced away from the screen. Someone else just crouched down and had the head between the legs. It was panic-inducing in ways you couldn't conceive of, and then obviously Divock does the decent thing.
I've got to add to that as well, because I remember that game very well. I was around my friend's house who was celebrating one of my mate's birthdays at the time, and what you've just said is that people facing away from the TV, crouching down, not willing to watch it because they were so nervous and stressed out. I had exactly the same experience around my friend's house, but they were all Man United fans. They were worried about Liverpool winning the title, but yeah, that's another conversation.
Yeah.
Blue Eye asks, any Newcastle players who you think would get in the Liverpool team and why, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting question. I think that it's whether or not they'd fit Klopp's system, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
So, Klopp is such a systems manager, but also it's worth saying, Liverpool, it's not like everyone who Liverpool have bought, I'll say it again, has turned up as the finished article. Liverpool work a lot on players and look to improve them. I love watching Sam Maximan. I don't know whether or not he'd start every week for Liverpool, but then, Luis Diaz isn't starting every week for Liverpool. I think he's electric. he's got a lot about him, a lot to recommend him as a footballer. I like what I've seen of Joel Linton since he's moved into the heart of the midfield, and I think that shows the idea of, footballers. We often act as though they're all meant to be the finished article, and actually they're on developmental curves. It's mad how young he is as well, by the way. It's mad how young he is. It's something that's been completely under-discussed. He's a genuinely young footballer who's still a prospect as far as I'm concerned, and because Newcastle paid an awful lot of money for him, he's been talked about as though in some way, shape or form he was meant to have been the finished article. And Bruno obviously looks like a player as well. You can't sort of escape that. He looks like a bright footballer. So there's a few, but then, as far as I'm concerned, I love a big lad, so I'd take either the centre forward or the centre half, but that's because I'm really quite basic still.
And I've got one last question for you, Neil, and I know Pete's going to want to ask you what your prediction is for the weekend, but Andrew Richardson asks, how long do you think it will be before we are challenging Liverpool?
If there's a plan to do it in a sustainable way, it'll be 4 to 5 seasons. If there's a plan to do it in an unsustainable / quasi outside of the rules way, it might be within 2 seasons. I think the sustainable way would actually be better and more in not just in football's interests, but in Newcastle's interests. So I think sort of building it year in, year out. I think what City, for as much as I would malign City and I would malign their ownership and I would malign the breaking of the rules, but one of the things that I think they did was they staggered themselves quite nicely and were able to buy a Jolie and Lescott, as an example. I think doing that sort of thing and taking it one stage at a time is the trick. It might now be that the stages are a little bit more difficult from a Newcastle point of view, but I think that there's lots of ways in which if we allow for the fact that the money is theoretically infinite and only limited by what the rules will or won't allow you to do, to stay within those rules, but go up to the very edge of them, then I think that, again, to do it in a way that I think would allow continual improvement, growth. I think 4 or 5 years to be able to do that in a year in, year out sense feels very, very feasible. And in the meantime, Liverpool, I mean, forget challenging Liverpool, challenging for the top of the Premier League. Liverpool might get worse. So I think you're looking at sort of 4 or 5 years for that sort of thing. But it's not really about the challenging bit because, and I hope Newcastle nail this in a way that I think City have sort of forgotten how to. It's about the journey and it's about enjoying it. And if you don't enjoy it, then what's the point? The idea it's got to be tomorrow, right now, and I hope that the Newcastle ownership have a sense of this as well. That I'm not going to quite argue for take the long road, but I'd certainly look to take the scenic view. There's the idea of the first trophy will feel like an enormous moment. Let's be honest. Then the first moment of European football with the full might of St James's will feel like an enormous moment. Then the first time that there's genuine competition for a Champions League place, an enormous moment. First Champions League group game, enormous moment. First time challenging for a title, whether you win it or not, enormous moment. The rush and then to demand that tomorrow takes the fun out of it. So even if that's possible, is that actually preferable? And I'd argue it isn't. I think if this is a legitimate thing in a spiritual sense, before we get onto any other aspects of which, I've got many views, but I've got to go and have my tea. You've got to end up enjoying every single step. And that to me is the beginning, middle, and end of it. I've got one more comment that I've just seen. Alan Thompson says, Neil, will you buy Chris and Pete a pint if we beat Manchester City next week? I'll be honest, all of you in the comments and Chris and Pete can absolutely just come and stay in ours if you beat Manchester City next week. I'll tell my wife who's downstairs wondering why I haven't come down for me tea yet. That we've got 143 Geordies turning up a week on Monday. Be all right. Seem all right.
It'd be fine because you'll have 3 points, so it won't matter.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
That is a perfect way to end that, without a doubt. Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Look, it's I'd love to have you on again. Going into next season, the away days is going to continue, no doubt about it.
Do something. I'm happy to come and do something in the summer as well.
100%. We'll get you nailed down for that.
Great.
Definitely. Just before you go, prediction?
Newcastle United 1, Liverpool 2. The last 10 minutes being almost physically painful as Newcastle bombard Liverpool and Liverpool hold out, and then we all go somewhere for a big cry.
Sounds absolutely perfect. Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, gents. Enjoy.
Neil. Bye-bye. You take care and speak to you soon.
All the best, mate.
top man. Great to have Neil on. He's a top guy. He really is. And look, the Anfield wrap just keep going and going. We had John on last time. We had Neil on this time. Both of them absolutely spot on guests. Chris, they're doing the Scousers proud, surely.
Yeah, do you know what, mate? I mean, well, you'll know yourself, Pete, how big the Anfield Wrap is. So it was a pleasure having John on last time, and to get Neil on tonight. You know, I was looking on their Twitter before, 400,000 followers.
Yeah,
Neil knows his stuff. Do you know what I mean? He's Liverpool, massive club, very very knowledgeable as we saw tonight, and I think as well, which was really nice. He was very respectful when he was talking about us as well. Not that I would expect him to be disrespectful, but what I mean is he spoke about us in a very good light. And by the sounds of it, you know, he's expecting a difficult game at the weekend. As am I. I think we will turn up, and I think we will cause Liverpool some problems. And in fairness, we didn't really get a chance to touch on it, but you could argue in the last few games, Liverpool haven't exactly been firing on all cylinders. I mean, when you were off the show earlier on, Pete, I was talking about the Villarreal game, and actually no, it might have been pre-show, but I was talking about the Villarreal game anyway, and I was saying I thought Villarreal were quite disappointing. Like I was expecting more from them, and Neil was quite the opposite. You know, as far as he was concerned, you know, he thought Villarreal played all right, and it was just the fact that you know Liverpool broke them down, and you know they could and should have scored more than two. But for me, I don't think Liverpool have been all that impressive in the last few weeks, and certainly not. They're not at the top of the top of the game. But as we know, with teams that can be or are the best teams in Europe, they could just turn up and beat us 5-0 at the weekend. Do you know what I mean? Because they're capable of that, and that's the worry. And that's why I was talking about it being a litmus test. Because if we challenge them and we give them a good game, all right, we may not come away with any points, but we can go, do you know what? We've played against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. We were this close. And we've played against Liverpool at home, and we've given them a bloody good ride. And it just gives us a bit of confidence going into next season, doesn't it?
For sure. And I think you've made a really good point, is that, you know, Liverpool haven't been firing on all cylinders. And actually watching that game on Sunday, you know, I think all of the Newcastle United fan base were hoping that Liverpool were going to romp to a 4-5-6-0 victory against Everton. And actually, I don't think that performance and the 2-0 victory in the end was down to Everton, in my opinion. You know, Jamie Carragher was going to talk about how good Everton were because he wants to big them up. He wants them to stay in the Premier League. But actually, it was down to Liverpool not firing on all cylinders, as you've said. And I think if Liverpool played the same way they did on Sunday against Newcastle United on Saturday, I don't think they're going to get as much of an easy ride. And you've alluded to that yourself, because we've got players that are confident. We've got players that can hurt Liverpool in certain situations. We talked about Bruno Guimaraes. We went to the tactics board. We looked at areas where they can really kind of cause Liverpool some problems. And look, we're not Everton. We're not fighting for our lives right now. We're safe in the Premier League. You know, we are safe in the Premier League. We're ninth in the table. We're looking up rather than down. So we've got nothing to lose here. And some people can see that, you know, in years gone by, teams like, you know, Watford, Bournemouth, Leicester, you know, you go for another number of other teams, Southampton, Villa, in previous seasons where they've been very, very comfortable. There's that famous term on the beach. And actually, in actual fact, I think it's a case of, you know, we're not, because Eddie Howe.
We're definitely not on the beach. No, you're right. We're definitely not. No, we're out there to finish as high up the table as we can.
Definitely. Look, we've got a few minutes left on the show before we wrap up. Any questions that you have for us, just throw them in very, very quickly. Like I said, we've only got a few minutes before we wrap up the show. So any questions in the chat? We've got, 74, 75 watching right now. Whack your questions in. Let us know what you want to know from us with regards to all things Newcastle United. One of the things that Jordan Mick put on earlier on the show, my internet was abnormally slow. I do not know. I restarted my laptop twice during the beginning of that show, and it came on twice extremely slow. I had to restart it a third time in order to make it work properly, and luckily, fingers crossed, it managed to get back on. But you know, the main man, Chris Hall. This is what we do. This partnership, I'm not on. Chris holds the fort, and vice versa. This is why we work so well together, and we enjoy doing shows together. That is for sure. But yeah, we've got any questions in there? Any questions so far? Not quite any questions. Look, we've got time for a couple of questions before we leave. So if anyone got any questions, anything Newcastle United related, throw it out there. But boys, in the meantime, Keith, I'll come to you from your perspective. Building up to the game. In your opinion, do you think we've got a chance of winning on Saturday?
Statistically and generally, I think any game you've got a puncher's chance. Anybody's always got a chance, especially when Liverpool have been on the run they've been on that I touched on earlier. 22 unbeaten in domestic competition and 14 unbeaten. I think obviously Bruno has been playing really well, and obviously Joe Linton working really well together. Carrying that on into this game after the Norwich game, from the Norwich game definitely. And Wood could create some problems there up top. The physicality of Wood there. Maxi, and Willock last year, he created some problems around this time of the year at the game in Anfield. So they've definitely got a chance. For me, the carrot on the stick though of Liverpool going top midday, even if it's just for that short period, and they have been handling, albeit some of the results have been workmanlike. They have been handling that pressure really well since early January, really. But what's to say that Newcastle kind of get a point to make it tricky? It's certainly without the realms of a 1-1 or maybe a 2-2, and shaking that Premier League title race up and handing the incentive to City. It's not without the realms.
I totally agree, Keith, and I think it's an interesting one because the problem that Liverpool have got is that we're coming into the game, we've got nothing to fear. If you look at Everton, they were panicking because Everton are desperate for the points, whereas we're no longer desperate for points. We just want to go out there and try and give as good a performance as we can, and hopefully send some shockwaves through the league. Don't forget, we were talking about potential signings the other week. Imagine saying to a potential signing in the summer, "Oh, by the way, did you see the way we turned Liverpool over?" It's little things like that. If we put in a good performance against Liverpool, or God forbid we beat them, that will make everybody in Europe stand up and go, bloody hell, Newcastle have gone from here to here. I seen a picture the other day. In fact, it wasn't the other day, it was this morning. I seen a picture and it showed our league position on the 3rd of December as opposed to our league position now. And you think, if we show potential signings that and go, and by the way, 30th of April, back end of the season, we beat Liverpool as well and stop them winning the title. That's only going to enhance our chances.
Absolutely. I think we're about 5 points cut adrift, weren't we, in that bottom three from Leeds, really. Yeah. And obviously now I think I put a comment on the NUFC show the other day saying that would be in the Champions League. It would be 93, 94 all over again. We'd be finishing third if we could just stretch that form that we had from January across the full season. Yeah. The other thing, Chris, I'd like to add as well, what could have a factor in this game coming up and the remaining games, albeit there's nothing riding on it from us now that we're safe, really just trying to get up that table a bit more, sustain our position in the table. Players playing for the futures at Newcastle, they're looking over that shoulder, and I've heard about some tales about Man City with a takeover, what they were like in the early days. You had some established people, Micah Richards saying, they were looking over their shoulder, worrying about what was happening for the summer, and it brought them on a level or two, raising their game. And that could, some of those Newcastle players, what I'm looking forward to from now until the end of the season is not the season pittering out like it has done in previous seasons when we've got safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Keith, in what you say, and I think what'll be key for me as well, and I don't know about your boys' opinion of this, but I think it'll be really interesting if we go 1-0 up on Saturday, because then I want to see how they react to that. If we just go for them and we go 1-0 up, I think everyone will just go whoa, like and the crowds, the stadium, everything will be buzzing, and that's when we'll see what Liverpool are all about. I think if we go 1-0 up early doors, it's going to be one hell of a game.
Definitely. Yeah, I really do. I think, like you said, the atmosphere is going to be electric if we go 1-0 up, and it's really going to put Liverpool on the back foot. And it's not many times in the season that they've been put on the back foot, that's for sure, without a doubt. So, look, we've got a few questions we'll run through really, really quickly before we go off. First one, do you think Trippier will be involved on Saturday?
No.
Yeah, bit too soon for Trippier, I think.
Yeah. I think if we were desperate for the points and we were fighting to stay in the league, I think that he would be in consideration. I actually think he would have been back by now. I think the only reason he hasn't is because we've not needed him, because we're still picking up points. But any changes to the starting 11 from your point, you guys?
I think there has to be, because I do think we rested a few players for the last game. Just to quickly run through it, I think it'll be Dubravka, I think it'll be Target, Shah, Bain, and Kraft. I think we'll see Joe Linton, Shelvey, and Bruno.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see Maxi, Woods, and Miggy.
Similar, Keith?
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't really change the team as much. I think we had some good run-outs on Saturday. It was interesting to see Lascelles back, and it was interesting to see, how they were performing really. And I think obviously the stability of Burn helped Lascelles on Saturday a bit more. Whereas, if Burn wasn't there, maybe it might have been a different story. But I would like to see, a bit more Willock in these matches, certainly. Either he figures a bit earlier if need be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if it's 0-0, Keith. If it gets to say the 60 mark, bring him on earlier and get those legs in the middle of the park. Yeah, you're quite right. Definitely. What about you, Pete?
I think from the Norwich game we'll make changes. I think it'll be the team that I put on the tactics board. I think it'll be the same team that effectively won the game in midweek, with the likes of Shelby coming back in, Shaw, Miggy on the right hand side. I think that will be our team. Dubravka, Kraft on the right, Shaw and Burn, Target, Shelby sitting, Bruno, Joe Linton, Miggy on the right, Maxi on the left, Wood up top. I think that will be our go-to team, because I think that's why we've rested those players at Carrow Road to make sure they're fully fit for Saturday. That's just my opinion, for sure.
I agree, mate.
Right, I've got so there's this one here. Do you think it was set up similar to how we did against Chelsea? Thinking about the Spurs result. No, not really, because the likes of Murphy played in that game. I don't think it'll be that way. I think we're at home. We're at St James's Park. We're going to want to attack them. Are you guys in the same mindset?
I think we go out and have a go. We've got nothing to lose. Not to say we didn't play well against Chelsea, because we did, but I think, a bit like what Neil alluded to, I think we are going to literally have a go at them, because let's be honest, lads, if we lose 3-0, it's more a case of learning from what we've done wrong. But if we go out there and we score early, that then puts Liverpool on the back burner, because they have to come out, they have to come and attack us, and that could play to our advantage. Because Liverpool can't, if we go 1-0 up, Liverpool can't just sit there and think, what are we going to do? They're going to have to come at us, and I think that plays into our hands.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a chance to experiment really and throw the dice. We haven't really been in that position as Newcastle fans over the years. We've always had a few of these tough games and been sweating, and there's always been maybe a game or two where we've, a couple of games left of the season, but now we're in the position where we're safe. Why not throw the dice? And I think how we'll be assessing, these throws of the dice and these little experimentation formations to see how Newcastle do, standing toe to toe.
We've got
Those
another
games.
question here. Adam McCarthy asks, "Who's our bottom three?" So, Keith, who do you think is going to be the bottom three?
The bottom two for me pick themselves. Really, I think,
Mhm.
especially as Watford are playing, going to be playing Burnley and Everton. Really, I just think, and I'm going to be sad to say it for Roy. I don't want Roy to go out like that, but it looks like it is. I think Norwich, that result pretty much finished them off that we did. So they'll be in there as the bottom, Watford the second. And I'm on the fence, Chris, about
I am.
Burnley and Everton. I mean, I don't have too much bad about Everton against them, but I just think that Burnley, I don't want them to go down. I just feel that it was wrong that the way Dyche was treated and Dyche gone. And I've been impressed with how those players have reacted really in those games. It's been easy for them to fold basically and not say we haven't got a proper manager, but they haven't. They've got an impressive result away to West Ham. They've got an impressive couple of wins there at home at Turf Moor. I'd like them to do it. And I'm not impressed with Everton's attitude. The actual players down in tools talking about moves and, they don't deserve it really. But there's still a part of us that thinks they can still grab a result or two at Goodison. And I put it in the chat on NUFC Matters on your show on Monday. I won't be surprised if they get a surprise result against Chelsea, because Chelsea are all in a right state as it is with their situation
They are.
at Goodison, with the atmosphere at Goodison. What's to say that Everton don't grab another surprise 1-0 win? And a couple of other results at Goodison, grabbing a point here or there or two. Whereas, so for me, that is so difficult to call. And when have we actually had a situation where we've got an intriguing Premier League battle at the top with the top two? We've got the top four battle, which still hasn't been sorted yet. And we've got the bottom two of who's actually going to stay up. We've got those three questions, those three jeopardies, which haven't been sorted out yet. So I don't know about how you guys feel, but for me, it's the bottom two, and then I kind of call that last one. I want it to be Burnley, but I think it's still going to be Everton.
Yeah. No, I'm similar to you, Keith. I'm a little bit on the fence. I know everything points to Everton. I'm going to say Norwich and Watford are down. I know everything points to Everton, but I know they've been involved in many a great escape in the past. I do, for sentimental reasons, I do think Everton have never been down, and obviously a lot of my friends and family support Everton. So I do feel for them, because I know how horrible relegation is. I know I probably sound like a broken record, but then on the other hand, the other half of me thinks, well, I've taken a lot of stick from Everton fans over the years. So if they were to go down, maybe I wouldn't feel the same way. Maybe I'd be a little bit smug about it. But for some weird reason, a bit like you, Keith, I've just got this gut feeling that Everton could still get out of it. And do you know what? Another reason why I think that, because I look at that Burnley squad and I just think, wow, how have you stayed in the Premier League? Like, if you get a minute, go on your live score or go on Google or whatever and just look at the Burnley 11 and the bench. Just have a look at it. You're seeing players like Aaron Lennon and Josh Brownhill and stuff like that, and you just think, how are you even still a Premier League club? I'd struggle to even see them do well in the Championship, let alone churn out results and ensure that they've been in the Premier League for so long. It's incredible. And
can you imagine?
Oh, sorry, go on, Keith.
Can you imagine how? Sorry, Chris. Can you imagine how ridiculous it would be in that moment, though, if Everton did go down and you'd see the likes of Iwobi go down, Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin,
Alan, Decore.
It would just be nuts. It would be crazy.
Unreal. Yeah. And I do worry for them as well. I worry for them because I question as well whether Frank Lampard is the right manager to bring them back up. I was quite envious when they got Frank Lampard, because I thought, he could do a good job, and obviously it hasn't really panned out for him. And I do have some sympathy with him, because I do think he's been dealt a pretty poor hand. I think he's got a squad of players who are demotivated, aren't particularly bothered. So I do feel for him in that sense. But I do question whether or not he's got the facilities, if you like, to be able to, you know, bring a squad together and get them up that championship. Because make no mistake about it, if they don't bounce straight back up, they could do a Stoke, they could do, you know, they could do a Sheffield Wednesday and just never come back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Nottingham Forest is the same.
Yeah.
How long's Nottingham Forest not been back in?
Yeah.
Obviously, they're doing well this season, but you're right. For me, I know both of you have got your reservations and maybe think that Everton might sneak to stay in the league, but I think their luck's ran out. I think they're very, very lucky in recent weeks. I do. You know, you go back to the game at Goodison Park with Newcastle. You look at the last minute strike against Leicester. You know, they've picked up points. Man United, hugely deflected goal. Man United weren't great, but hugely deflected goal was the difference in the game. You know, they've got a lot of luck. That's 7 points that they've picked up. They're actually 7 points. Without those 7 points, they'd have been dead and buried. There's no doubt about it. Like, they'd have been gone. And I just think to myself, you know, at some point your luck runs out. And I think, you know, I'll be honest, and I think Chris alluded to this on Monday. If we'd have still had Bruce and Ashley, I think our luck would have ran out this season. I think we'd have got relegated. But obviously, we've got new owners and things have changed. But their luck, I think, will run out with the games that they've got. Even the games that they think is winnable. Brentford at home. You've got Brentford at home, Watford away. You know, you've got Palace at home. For Everton, I think, personally, from my opinion, that they're in a position where they're going to win. Where they're not going to win, and they might pick up points or losses where they think they're going to get 3 points, and I think that's going to be a key difference in this season. That's just my opinion. But yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. There's a few questions. I think Chris has had to leave us. He's got a couple of bits that he needs to do, but we've got Adam McCarthy here. It says, and what will be our final league position, and will it affect the fans' thoughts on next season? Interesting question. What do you think, Keith?
Well, if results go the way I'm thinking they're going, and I'm going realism here, and I think that, you know, I'd love to hold on to 9th at least, and maybe even 10th, but I think it's going to be more realistic to think maybe 11th to 13th, somewhere in between the two. And we're kind of not feel to be affected by the form that we've had. Like I said to you last week, it's like a season of two halves. And that first half of the season, it seems like a long, long time ago. It's an eternity ago almost, with this new ownership coming in. That's why we're so positive and focusing on the form, particularly from the back end of December onwards. And like I said to you, and like I put in the chat on Monday, if that could be extended over a 9-month period, that's another 93-94 season. That's us firmly in the top 6. And there's certainly no reason, if we look at it if we're looking at the form, why we can't at least crack the top 8 if we keep going the way we're going next year. And that for me would be brilliant, really, because we haven't been in the top 8 since that season when we finished 5th in 2011-12. So that would be brilliant. A few more smart acquisitions over the summer. And as Neil alluded to earlier in the show, this is going to be an unusual Premier League season coming up. You know, we haven't got the World Cup hangover of the summer. We're going to have it right in the middle of the season. On paper, and, you know, there ain't going to be a miracle. We're not going to be in Europe next year for next season. So why can't we just take advantage of that? There's going to be a lot of heavy legs out there. Big squads, but heavy legs. And a lot of travelling. From a World Cup and from, you know, all the extra European midweek games.
Yeah,
we again could seize that opportunity.
I agree, definitely. And we're you know, like I say, for me, I think me and Chris talked about it on Monday. I wouldn't mind finishing around sort of 8th, 9th, 10th if it meant that we didn't have in any way, shape, or form a relegation battle. That would show progression for me. Now, would that suffice the likes of Eddie Howe and Bruno Guimaraes and one or two others that we may sign? Probably not. And that's why I think we'll probably end up finishing higher than that, just because our players, our manager will be so focused that have a full preseason training under their belts, something we didn't have this season. We've talked about how well we've done this season, the back end of this season with Eddie Howe. We've not even had a preseason training camp to get us in that sort of shape. He's had to do that on the job effectively during a very busy season. You think what we'll have with a preseason under our belt and how we maybe enter into next season. I think the likelihood that we could finish higher than that, but I think, in my opinion, we'll be in a position where we are, 10th, 9th, 8th, and certainly being in the conversation with regards to European football. That's, like I say, that's just my opinion. But I wouldn't be down by any of those positions that I've just mentioned, because I think it will show progression, and that's what we need to do. It show that progression, show that we're going in the right direction, and that will give us exactly what we need. Chris's internet's gone down, so my internet went down at the beginning of the show. Chris's internet has gone down towards the end of the show. It's typical. Nothing ever runs smooth, but Chris, absolute pleasure to have you on, and top man as always. I can't see Everton surviving in the league. They've got some hard games coming up. They have, they really have. It's going to be a difficult one. We've got this one. Do you think Maxi and Miggy will do their job on the wing and maybe try and hold Salah and Mane? I don't think it's about those two boys holding Salah and Mane. I think that's about the fullbacks. But I think the question should be, maybe, Chantel, is can Miggy and Maxi, cause problems to Trent and Robertson the other way? Would you agree with that, Keith?
Definitely. It's I must admit, I'm sort of thinking, what can we do going forward? With ASM. Neil touched on it earlier as well about how he likes ASM, and I've been impressed by Miggy in the last few weeks. He seems like he's getting some form back. Even before the goal, he looked hungry. In those games leading up to that. So, and it's about creating some of those, as you say, the fullbacks of Liverpool, some problems there really, and contain it. It's an intriguing battle. I mean, there is levels. I'm a realist, and I know there's levels there with Liverpool's squad compared to Newcastle. But this is a game for once we can actually go and enjoy this fixture and not think about what happens. It's going to be an entertaining game. It could have, for me, it's got a little bit of that feel of. Can you remember last year when we played Man City at the end of I think it was like more or less the second to last game of the season. It ended up being a 7-goal thriller.
Yeah.
And that player who went to Barcelona, he ended up getting a hat-trick. But it was a brilliant game. It could have that sort of feel to it. I'm not saying it's going to be a 7-goal thriller, but it could be an open game, and who knows what could happen, really.
Yeah. Definitely. We're a really, really interesting game to see how it opens up. Chris has definitely got my internet bug. That is for sure. Adams also said, I hope Everton go down. Apologies to people who could lose their jobs. That's the thing that we don't think about.
Yeah.
Is that, when a team gets relegated, there are lots of people that do lose their jobs. And Adam, you're absolutely right to think about those people.
Yeah.
You can want the team going down. But go on, Keith. Sorry.
Absolutely. I think we've both been to Liverpool, Pete, and we're both like, the people in the city, and, had interactions with them and stuff. And we can, just like up here, really, it's hard when teams go down and normal folk lose their job. Everybody loses their job. It's tough. I mean, we can remember with Newcastle, the impact it had, with the club shops closing. At the time, I think even Sunderland in the early 2000s, they had a shop at the Metro Centre, and that had to close. And particularly in this current climate, with the economy the way it is, it's not nice. And once you go from I suppose the levels have multiplied since the early 2000s. The stakes now, when a team gets relegated, the first people to go will be, unfortunately, the hardworking people, who aren't on the exorbitant salaries of players who will find another club quickly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's something that we always need to bear in mind. When it comes to the end of May, in the end of the season, Leipzig have taken the lead against Rangers. Big goal that. Leipzig are a very, very good team that might be hard to overturn. Ian Barron's back. Mad Darlow fan back. Hope you are well. Good to see you on, Ian. Always great to have you on the channel. Ferran Torres.
Absolutely, that was the one who went to Barcelona, and he's having a fair season at Barcelona, but I think he had a remarkable run when he was at Man City. He got something like 13 goals or something before he went over to Barcelona.
Good player. I'm surprised that Man City let him go, but I think Pep understood that he needed to play games at such a young age, and he had the sort of future at his feet, and looked like Pep wanted to go in a different direction, and that's fair enough. But he's a good player.
Here's something for you, Pete. I just wanted to ask, I was thinking of it earlier. So you get to the Champions League final, and let's say it's Liverpool, Man City, or let's say it's Man City in the final against Villarreal. Do you think Man City's lack of striker is going to catch them out in that final? Bear in mind, obviously, they've still got to go to the Bernabeu and face the world's most informed striker at the moment, without a recognised striker themselves.
I think Man City win regardless. In my opinion, I think they'll win the Champions League regardless, and the reason being is because I think Man City are desperate to win the Champions League because it's the one they're missing. And I think, Neil made a good point in that he thinks that Man City might slip up once or twice between now and the end of the season. And it wouldn't surprise me if that happens. But yet they go and win the Champions League. And the reason being is because I think Pep wants to win the Champions League more than anything else. He's won the Premier League. And yes, he would love to win the Premier League again. But the Champions League is where I think he kind of solidifies himself as an absolute great. He's won it with Barcelona. He didn't win it with Bayern Munich, but I think he feels like with the money that he spent, over £1 billion up there with Man United over recent years that he spent at Man City, he'll feel like he has to win the Champions League. Otherwise, it won't be a successful period. And I'll be honest with you, I think that's the reason he stayed as long as he has at Man City. Because I feel that he won't leave Man City until he's won the Champions League because of how much money's been invested and how much time he's invested in the club. I think that's why he stayed at Man City for as long as he does. I think if he wins the Champions League this season, I think he may give it another year, and I think he then may move on because he's hit their target of what they wanted. I think they brought Pep Guardiola in to win the Champions League, a little bit like what PSG have done with so many other managers over the years. They brought him in not to win the league, not to win the cups, because they do that with any manager, but to win the Champions League is the big one. And I think that's what Man City have done. And what's really interesting about that, and flipping it back to Newcastle again, is that that's what Bruno Guimaraes is talking about. That's what a lot of Kieran Trippier has talked about, like in little bits. But certainly Bruno Guimaraes is that the conversation with Bruno Guimaraes about why he signed for Newcastle is they want to win the Champions League. Like, not win the Premier League, they want to win the Champions League. And that is the remit for these owners that have got lots of money that they want to, invest in the club. They don't just want to win the Premier League. They feel confident enough that in time they will win the Premier League, but they want to win the big one. They want to win the Champions League. They want to win the one, or arguably the best competition in world football. Even instead of the World Cup, even instead of the Euros, winning the Champions League is the big one. And I think that's what Pep really wants. And then flipping it back to Newcastle, I think it's really telling, the fact that our owners have set that target to the players that have come in the club. I don't know what you think about that.
And one thing I was smiling at there, Pete, when you said that, when you were talking about the Champions League, when you flipped it, I couldn't help thinking and casting my mind back to the early 2000s and one of my favourite seasons. We went from the doldrums of, and Robson stabilised things, and when we didn't quite get to Europe when we fit for 1 year, when we finished 11th, and Shearer was saying we're a top 6 club and we should at least be in Europe. The following year, where we just came from nowhere and we finished 4th. Can you imagine if we did something similar in this next upcoming season at the end of 23, 20, 22, 23? We end up gate crashing that top 4. And can you imagine the pundits up and down the country and on Sky and on the BBC and everything and on TalkSport, what they'd be like about Newcastle finishing 4th and being in the Champions League, and what it would be like for that ride, just completely missing the Europa League and the Conference League, just catapulting myself 4th.
Keith, you've made a fantastic point, and you know what? That's the talking point. Is that you've just said it there. We've done it before. We've done it before. We've gone from fighting the bottom half of the table under Bob Robson to then go straight to the Champions League. We've done it before. Yes, it's a different league now, finances, all the rest of it, but we've got the finances. There's no reason why we can't do it again. If we're consistent enough over the course of the season, if we've got the manager, which we have, and I believe we have, that can keep us consistent and playing a certain football that gets us points on the board. Hell, if West Ham can do it, if Wolves can maintain a season like they have.
Leicester
won the league off the back of it. And I'm not saying we're going to go and win the league, but in a season, and let's face it, I'm not being disrespectful to Leicester, but in a season where Leicester won the league, they won it on 75 points. It's one of the lowest totals in a long while. And, a lot of the top teams had very bad seasons in order for Leicester to win the league. That's what a lot of people forget. Your Man Cities, your Liverpools, your Chelseas, your Man Uniteds, like your Arsenals, they all literally had bad seasons. Awful seasons where they were all effectively in transition, and Leicester took advantage of that, and fair play to them. I'm not saying that's going to happen again because Man City and Liverpool are in a different level, but who's to say that Chelsea, and someone's asked a question in the chat about Chelsea, if I find it, thoughts on Chelsea next season after Mitch's fantastic thoughts on the takeover last night. And he made a great point. Chelsea might be in transition. Tottenham, if they lose Conte, might be in transition again. Arsenal, having European football, might not be able to play as well as they have been in the Premier League and just focus on the Premier League. You've got all of those teams that may be in transition. West Ham, that might be in Europe again, it might be a step too far in terms of maintaining their top 4 push with playing in the Europa League again.
It was one of my favourite. It was one of my favourite segments of the show, actually, Pete. I listened to it back this morning. I couldn't listen live last night, but I listened back this morning. And Mitch, when he was talking about the segment where he was talking about the Chelsea situation, the ownership models, the prospective ownership models. I mean, I didn't think it was I thought it was a bit crazy. And then Mitch, he just put it on another level when he explained it to us, on the actual show of, the one which is that makes sense to him is the loaded debt one, because the other two, the fan ownership thing, that's a crazy idea and a crazy model. And obviously the other one is as well, and that's who they're left with for the three prospective owners. And also as well about this 10-year thing about nobody else can buy the club within 10 years. It's just crazy. Chelsea, for me, I've said it once or twice, they could be the next Man United or Arsenal in the wrong way. When things started to go wrong at those clubs in the last 7 years and 14 years, when Arsenal don't look like they're going to qualify for the Champions League, when Man United are struggling to qualify for the Champions League, and that is a massive reality check there for Chelsea. And when that happens as well, because obviously they've been bankrolled by Abramovich for all those years to the point that we don't realize, but he has been putting and financing the club up to the point, because they were never a huge club and the level of Liverpool or Man United, but obviously Abramovich, he bridged the gap to make them that level. When that's gone, and nobody puts the same level of money in, or even half the money in, potentially, where does that put Chelsea in the table? And bear in mind as well, they still don't have a stadium, which, you know, they've got a 40,000 seater stadium, and they still haven't got that 60,000 seater stadium. And they haven't got an answer to that problem either, because nobody wants them to extend Stamford Bridge. So the wheels could really come off there for Chelsea. And again, would echo what Mitch was saying, we don't want anything like that happening to football teams. But in terms of Chelsea being a regular Champions League finishing side, winning cups and challenging for honours, those days could be gone.
Definitely. And I put the point to Mitch last night. I said, you know, a lot of Chelsea fans think that it's going to be the Abramovich style new owners, where they're going to lavish the cash and spread it wide in terms of bringing the youth players in and spending 80 million on Lukaku and 78 million on Kepa, and they think this money is going to be still going about, and they're going to be able to fill this big wide hole that's been there for 20 years that Abramovich has just filled and filled and filled constantly. Not going to work like that. It's not going to work like that. And I think the Chelsea fans are going to be very, very surprised, whoever takes over the club, that they're not going to be able to spend the sort of money that they've been accustomed to for so many years. And it's going to be a really, really interesting situation. Geordie Tune for Life said, and I wasn't aware of this, now Chelsea want the new buyers to stump up an extra 500 million. That apparently was on Sky today. I wasn't aware of that. But, you know, it alludes to the points that Mitch said. And look, Mitch is an absolute legend. I love listening to him, whether it's on Three Amigos, whether it's on the Geordie Dentist on Loaded HQ. He just talks so much sense, and he knows so much about football. It's not about his sources and who he speaks to. It's just his understanding of football, which I love listening to. He's probably one of the main ones within Newcastle United, sort of, you know, whether it's podcasts, YouTube channels, that I love watching the most. Him or listening to him and maybe Alex Hurst on True Faith. Those two in particular, I just love listening to because their knowledge of football.
Keith Patterson as well.
Keith Patterson, yeah, top guy, been on the show as well. Sorry, yeah, I forgot him. But the three of them, they've just got so much fantastic knowledge of football, and I just love listening to what they've got to say. And Mitch has hit the nail on the head. And actually, if they're trying to stump up an extra 500 million from all these new prospective owners, that just got alarm bells ringing in my head.
Do you think
this is not going to happen?
Do you think these three prospective buyers, Pete, when they're looking at the finer detail of what they've actually put themselves forward to, are looking at this as well from a different angle now that the reality is settling in, thinking, whoa, what's this, an extra 500 million? We didn't budget for that, you know. You know, if we actually win this and win this bid and take over the club, what are we going to do? Do you think there's some sort of doubts lingering in with a few of those prospective ownership models there?
I think it would be crazy if there wasn't any doubt setting in with the fact that they're trying to get a deal done. A deal's not done with any of the prospective buyers, and then all of a sudden the goalposts change. If that was Newcastle United, everyone would be saying that's a Mike Ashley move. And if you look at the previous prospective buyers before Amanda Staveley, where a deal was looking likely, and then all of a sudden Mike Ashley moves the goalpost and he raises the price and he says, I want more money, or I want more money for this, or I want more money for that. And the buyers go, nah, not for me. You keep changing the goalpost here. That's a Mike Ashley move. So the fact, if that's the case, and I've not seen that today. I've been out of bounds for most of the day. So if Geordie Tune for Life is right, and that's apparently what they've said, whether it's for whether they want to help the victims of the war or not, it's so close to a deal potentially being done, and then they're asking for more money. That's not a good sign at all, in my opinion. And it does ring massive alarm bells for me. That this deal is not going to be done. But Mitch has said for a long while that he's been adamant in his opinion, that he doesn't believe that the takeover is cut and dry, and he thinks there's going to be a lot of twists and turns before any particular deal can be done. And if this deal goes into past May and into June, you've got to think to yourself, that's going to seriously hamper their transfer plans in terms of buying and selling.
Players out of contract.
Yeah, well, I say they're two best centre backs, but certainly their second best centre back in Rudiger, maybe even their first, depending on your argument, and their third best centre back in Christensen. They leave the club for nothing. They're both out of contract. Aspilicueta, legend of the club, yes, maybe a little bit past it now, 35 years old, I think he is, goes on a free. His contract's out as well. So they're losing some important players for the club, and are they going to be able to replace those players? Are they going to be able to replace those players with the same type of quality? Are they going to need to raise money? Which I raised the question, and I think Daz raised the question as well last night about Conor Gallagher. Are they going to keep him, or are they going to use him as a make weight to make a little bit of money? Are they going to have him come through the youth ranks, do really well at Crystal Palace, and then go, you know what, Palace, we're going to probably sell him to you for about 20 million in the summer, but we need to make some money. Highest bidder, I was going to say 30 million. Highest bidders come in because we need the money right now. And there's someone like Newcastle United going to take advantage of that. That's a question mark that we're going to touch on during the fully loaded transfer show in the summer. But it's one to keep an eye on. And there's maybe a couple of other Chelsea players that maybe Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Ross Barkley. I'm not saying they'll come to Newcastle. There'll be other players in that Chelsea squad that you might think, actually, maybe they're not playing a lot of football right now. Maybe they're up for grabs to other clubs in Europe or the Premier League. It's going to be a really interesting situation with Chelsea and how that sort of unfolds. But we're going to, Mitch will be back on. He'll be back in the dentist chair at some point in the next month or so. We'll get him back on for another chat and see how sort of things progress from that point of view. A few more questions that I want to get through before we do our predictions and we bring the show to a close. Simon, massive supporter of the club, of the channel, and also a big sponsor to us, said, would you play Willock as a false nine? Interesting question.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. He certainly had that element of surprise at the end of last season, didn't he? When he scored those 7 goals in 7 games. Brilliant. When you think of those types of goals that he was coming in, he proved he had aerial ability as well. Something that we haven't seen a lot of since certainly Rondon. We haven't seen somebody who can head the ball and get winning goals from headers as well. Why not? Why not bring that element of surprise in with these games? Willock looked like, a few games, certainly against West Ham, and that he was getting his goal scoring touch back. Let's give it a go. We're not going to bring in Dwight Gale. It's definitely not on the cards. So who else have we got apart from Chris Wood from a potent threat? Maxi hasn't scored since, as much as we rate Maxi and like him as a player, I think was his last goal in January or something. It's been a long time since his last goal for Newcastle. So Watford 1-1.
Yeah.
So again, you're looking at I know Bruno could actually end up being top scorer, so, and Wilson, how long is it going to be before Wilson gets back in the team? So look, why not just try these things and surprise a couple of teams? I haven't really got a lot to lose, so I'd like to at least give it a go for a couple of games, even if it, why not?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's one of those things that I think if Willock's going to be sort of a false nine, it will be in a transition period during the game. So it'll be that they'll bring him in, maybe take Wood off, play him in that transitional period as a false nine. I think the way in which he presses high up the pitch, you've seen that where he pressed high, he forced Krul to make that pass in which Bruno intercepts the ball, scores the fantastic chip at Carrow Road. Willock played a big part in that, and I think he's someone that maybe could kind of flourish in that position. But it's something to
and the winner against Leicester as well.
And you're right,
the diving header.
Definitely, he carried that ball fantastically up the pitch in order to get the ball into the box. Definitely, and again, like you said, it's something to keep an eye on for that. 86 in the chat. We've had another 10 subscribers come and subscribe to us tonight. Fantastic support. If you haven't already and you're in the chat right now, 86 of you, just click that button, come and join. Become a subscriber of Loader HQ, and you'll be able to see all the other shows that are coming up, and there'll be plenty more over the next week, that is for sure. We've got another question that said for Pete, but I'll put it to both of us. Pete, will we keep them out, and who will score for us, or what area will it come from? It's a good question, interesting one. So, Keith, there's a couple of questions in there. Will we keep them out, Liverpool, on Saturday? And if we do score, what area do you think it will come from?
Unfortunately, I can't say we'll keep them out. For 90 minutes, especially those stats I gave earlier about the attacking trident there for Liverpool. But moving on to the next questions, who will score for us? I think we've just touched on it there, the midfield. There's some opportunities there for the midfield. Maybe Saturday could be a game again, surprise us. Wood might be more of a portent up front, but with your sort of your Willock and Bruno G, and also the confidence Joe Linton has as well. I think they're probably your best options. Bruno, for a player that's never really scored goals, he must be absolutely thriving at the minute. Being on 4 goals like that from nowhere, really. And
yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I do think at some point Alan St-Maximin is going to turn the game on its head and do something that's going to really set the team apart. And I'm gonna stay confident. I think Alan St-Maximin might be the one to unlock the Liverpool door on Saturday. So fingers crossed that he's the guy that can do that. But we'll see. We'll see. There's some fantastic comments in the chat as well. But I'll go back to here. Alan Thompson, massive supporter of the channel, obviously on NUFC Matters on a Monday with us. Question, lads, will we play the long ball game? Interesting. As Liverpool press, I believe Shelby will be caught out big time. That's my fear. Interesting point from Alan. Do you think it'll be a long ball game from Newcastle United, or do you think we'll be maybe more more astute in our play?
It's another theory. It's another way to win. But here's a question: do you think the lads would have been doing that on the training pitch? Can you see them trying that out on the training field?
Yeah, good point.
But I mean, one thing I was thinking of, but I can just kind of see them doing it. Can you remember the last year, the Backs to the Wall performance over the Christmas period, 0-0?
Yeah.
Literally where we had everybody and whoever took behind the goal line and on the goal line, just keeping that ball out. And it really did scupper Liverpool that season over the Christmas period. I was thinking about that, but again, that was under the previous manager, and I just kind of see Newcastle play like that, or a bit more ambitious now.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point. It's I don't see us playing long ball like you said, Keith. I think the way in which we train and the way in which we prepare for games, it is about playing football. That's a team that Eddie Howe wants to play like. He wants to inherit, and also to a certain extent, mimic himself on the way that Liverpool play. So I think he'll stick to his values. He'll stick to his beliefs in how he wants to manage the team. I don't think we'll be like that in terms of long ball. I think a little bit like what Neil said in the show earlier on, in that they have Henderson that kind of switches the play to kind of move his team and progressively moving forward. I think that's what Shelvey and the likes of Bruno might do to us on Saturday. They might play that switch ball to Maxi or to Miggy that can run in behind, that takes the emphasis off his defending and push Liverpool back, just to push them back and get us up the pitch higher up. We might see one of those balls here and there, but not necessarily a long ball football. I don't think it'd be a long ball up to Wood, try and get a flick on, hold up the ball. I don't think it'd be that, because the players in and around Wood just don't play that way. That's, for me, that's my opinion on that. But there's a few more. How much money do you think we'll spend in the summer? I think it'll be around maybe the 110 million mark. What about you, Keith?
Yeah, a bit more than they spent over the January window. I was just thinking there, maybe pushing over 100, maybe 120. It's anybody's guess at the moment. As long as we make some smart acquisitions.
Yeah, definitely. John Askew, great to have you on the show. You've been on before, and you're on Matters before, so great to have you. If you haven't click subscribe for us and join the channel. They've timed the clock extension news to coincide with our game for a pre-match boost. They must be a bit nervous about Saturday. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Interesting point that that it's come so close to the game against Newcastle, and maybe they need that boost in order to get the fans on side more than anything, to try and carry them through. So that'll be something of interest there, to see whether it has the desired effect. Tom Dixon said, "Do you expect us to play 5 at the back and keep the same formation we had against Norwich?" We didn't play at 5 at the back. We had 4 at the back, and I don't think we'll play 5 at the back moving forward. I think we've only played 5 at the back in transitions during games, and we certainly haven't started recently with 5 at the back. And I think the fact that we'll play 4 at the back for so long, with Shaw and Byrne, I think that's what we're going to continue with. Would you agree with that, Keith?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that we just seem to be a lot more attacking minded now and a lot more ambitious. It's almost like the emphasis has changed and the priorities changed in games. If we're going into this game and we need a point or two, then I think we would be going, all 5 at the back. But yeah, I think I agree with what you say, Pete. I think I can't really see where I can see a different emphasis again being carried on into this game. Yeah,
I do. I think that's a great point, Keith. Massive thanks to Alan. Alan became a member, joined the Loaded family, member of Loaded HQ. If you haven't already, click that button, become a member, and join us. Lots and lots more content. Just click that join button, $1.99 a month. You cannot go wrong, and it'll put you into the prize draw that should be coming up very, very soon. And whilst you're there, click that sub button. We're well on the march for 3K subs, and we're looking to be going way beyond that in the months to come. That is for sure. Moving on from that, we've got Larry. Great to have Larry on. Larry Strawberry was on last week as well. I see a set piece goal, I think he means, by our defenders. Look at maybe the likes of Dan Burn and Shaw, who are definitely capable of scoring a goal. Do you think set pieces could be the difference, Keith?
Absolutely. I touched on it the other week as well. I mentioned it, about Chris Wood, really, what he does really in the air, bring the ball down. And I know it's been touched on in previous shows as well, how much more threatening we're looking at going forward on set pieces. So yeah, it could be a goal from a set piece. And can you imagine it now, like literally just shortly after 12:30, regardless of how the game ends up, but the roar and the eruption in the Gallagher in particular, but around St. James's Park with all the flags and everything, if we manage to go a goal up against Liverpool from a set piece.
Oh, it will absolutely erupt. the whole place will erupt. You know it will, and you just think the fans will just get behind the boys so much because the fans will try and carry the players through for the rest of the game. You just know it's going to happen.
It'll be like Anfield on a European night.
Well, it'll be Newcastle, like Newcastle United on a European night. That's exactly what it will be. But yeah, really looking forward to the game. I do think, you know, if we get the first goal, we've got a good chance of really kind of using our steel and trying to hold on to something. Yeah, it's just going to be an intriguing game. Really looking forward to it. Tom Dixon says Mike Dean's on VAR, so that's a big worry for us at the weekend. Mike Dean has not been our biggest friend, that is for sure. Hopefully it'll be the last time that Mike Dean referees or officiates a Newcastle United game, because I think it's been mentioned, he's retiring at the end of the season. So,
but isn't he going to be part of the VAR panel in future seasons?
I don't know.
So yes, he's retiring from the front line, but he's not entirely going from the game. They are planning on utilising his expertise behind the scenes on VAR, unfortunately. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. You know, I mean,
I think you're absolutely right, Keith. I don't want to dwell on that and hear that Mike Dean's constantly in the VAR room making decisions on the game.
I'm sure 5 years down the road, or maybe it's 10 years or whatever it is, if Mike Dean is on VAR on the game that Newcastle United win the Premier League or win the FA Cup, we'll not be bothered. It won't be remembered in 50 or 100 years' time. We won't be looking at, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We won't be looking at programs saying, "Oh, Mike Dean was on VAR. The Newcastle United won their first cup since 1969." It ain't gonna happen.
No, I agree with you, and let's all hope that doesn't have an impact on us. Fingers crossed, that is for sure. Good question here, John Askew. Are our centre backs quick enough to deal with Manu and Sane? No, I don't think they are, but I think their positional play is very, very good, and I think it'll be all about our fullbacks on Saturday. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, Newcastle have came on, haven't they, really defensively? I know we had that horror show against Spurs, but putting that in perspective, it was 45 minutes, and we're, up until that 45 minutes for first half, we had a great first half. And certainly I think since House came in and since the turn of the year, they've looked a lot more solid. So, in short, no, they aren't quick enough. I mean, who is quick enough to deal with Mane and Salah? And if you add in Jota as well in there for the tridents, but they're certainly heading in the right direction. They're a lot more improved. They're looking a lot more solid there with Burn and with Target there, and bringing out the best in the likes of Kraft as well. So it's. I'm sure there'll be shaky moments. If Newcastle were to get a result, I'm sure there'll be shaky moments, but it's impossible to keep Mane and Salah quiet.
They're just world class, and that's the thing. You're absolutely right, Keith. They are world class players, and it's just a case of can you just manage them for a certain period of time, not stopping them completely. I don't think there's many teams that could stop them completely for a 90-minute period. So it's one of those things. Stu, Miggy will always smile, regardless. He's a very, very happy-go-lucky footballer. And look, yeah, I think he'd be disappointed if he left the club. I think he can see where the progression's going. I think that's why you've seen an improvement in football. I still think there's a chance that he stays at the club and he continues playing for Newcastle United, maybe for another year. But I think that will depend on how the transfer window goes, in my opinion. That's just one of those things. But yeah, lots of people saying, brilliant, thank you for a great show. Massive thanks to everyone for their support. Thank you, Adam. We've definitely got a massive, a really good positive following on away days and Loaded HQ in general. Maxi will always be a problem for Alexander Arnold, John. There is no doubt about that. And look, we will definitely be in contact with Neil with regards to the house party when we beat Liverpool at the weekend. That is for sure. I think it just leads us now, Keith, to predictions that we haven't done. So, look, at 3 o'clock on Saturday, what do you think the result is going to be?
Well, I think Newcastle are definitely going to have their moments. Be more, certainly more confident than I have in previous seasons against Liverpool. And plus, as well, I just think this sort of run that Liverpool are on, especially with it being a midday kickoff as well after the midweek Champions League, there will be those shaky moments for Liverpool, no doubt.
Yeah.
Even though for me, they look a little bit stronger than that running the last time they went head to head with Man City, and it was 97 and 96 points each. I still think there'll be too much there, though, over the course of the 90 minutes. And because, as I said earlier in the show, there's that carrot on the stick where they can go top of the league at least for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
I think that Liverpool are still going to win out, maybe 2-1 or 3-1. But that won't be a bad showing for Newcastle. I certainly don't think it'll be a disgrace. So that's probably going to be my prediction. I'd love to be wrong, and I'd love for it to have a say in it, that title run at least, and for it to be a 1-1 or a 2-2. That'd be absolutely brilliant. Because can you imagine the scenes, Pete, on Soccer Saturday at just before 3 o'clock on the table, and can you imagine all the rest of the weekend, Jamie Carragher and all of that, what they'd be like, and on TalkSport, all the clips off TalkSport, but. Yeah, I'm real. I'm going real, and I think it'll be 2-1 or 3-1 to Liverpool, unfortunately. But please be wrong. Let's make it happen.
Definitely. Let's hope and pray that we're wrong with regards to that. So Larry's put, we could very well try and hang on to a 0-0 until half time and go and try and win. Yeah, definitely. There'll definitely be a case of we'll try and fill out the first 15 minutes. Like Neil said, they're going to want to come and score early on to set themselves down more than anything, and settle the fans down. If we're still in the game and hopefully winning at that point, that will change the mentality. There is no doubt about that. Jordy Tune for life. Head says 2-1. Hart says 1-1. I think there could be a sending off on Saturday. Interesting. Something to look out for. Larry's put my heart 2-1 Newcastle United. My head 3-1 Liverpool. So he's on the same line as Keith with his head. 2-2 would be absolutely brilliant for us. I would agree with that. That is for sure. And Chris has dropped on before he went off with the internet saying 1-1 for the weekend. By the way, I think we'll give them a game at the weekend, and we have to say, or we have a say in the title charge. Look, I'm going to stay ultra positive, as I always am. I do think we'll I think we'll win 2-1. I think it will be a tight game like before. I think we deserve to ensure that they are affected in the title race, just like they did to us many years ago. I think we deserve a little bit of payback for that, and I hope that the boys turn up and ensure.
Long-awaited revenge, but Pete has a question, throwing it back, right?
Yeah.
We somehow get a result, either a 1-1, a 2-2, or even a win, right, against Liverpool. What do you think the media narrative will be? How much praise do you think they'll give Newcastle for the result, and how much do you think it'll be about Liverpool losing their way and being what a crying shame it is that Liverpool didn't win? How much do you think it'll be apportioned to either? What do you think the narrative will be?
It all depends on the channel that you're following. So if you're looking at BBC from a match of the day point of view, it will be very much Newcastle deserved it. We earned the result. Why? Because Alan Shearer is a pundit on BBC. If it's Sky Sports, it'll be an absolute travesty. They shouldn't have been a 12:30 kickoff. They've just played in the Champions League. Those boys are tired. Blah 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 blah. Why? Because Jamie Carragher is the poster boy for Sky Sports. If it's BT will probably be a little bit down the middle. You get your Michael Owens and one or two of the other Liverpool boys quite negative. You get the Man U boys that will be very positive towards us. You'll get Jake Humphries that will be singing our praises on BT Sport because he loves Newcastle United and has been fighting for us for a couple of years with regards to the takeover. So it'll be a mixed bag with regards to that. So I think it will be depending on the media channel in which you're watching at that particular time. But there's no doubt about it. If we get a result against Liverpool, we would have deserved it because they're a talented team, regardless of what anybody else thinks. You got Simon Rudd said 1-1 will be ideal. Chantel gone for a 1-0 win to Newcastle. Tom Dixon 1-1 or 2-2. Simon's come back and said he's hoping for a 1-0 Newcastle win. So am I. And interestingly, Tom Dixon said looking forward to the Man City away day show, which I'm looking at signing up very, very shortly. We didn't get a Man City away day earlier on in the season just because of time differences, but hopefully the guy that I want to get on will be a really, really good chat, and we'll be talking and maybe comparing a little bit of takeovers as well. So we'll be adding that into the away day field as well. So definitely something to look forward to. But my prediction 2-1, fingers crossed, we can get that sorted. Would love Jake on the channel, Adam. Watch this space. We'll see what we can do. And look, we'll end it there. But Keith, massive thanks for you joining us and seeing out the show with us as before. Not quite the 4 hours it was last week, but we made it. We made it to a nice, comfortable 2 hours and 50 minutes at the end. Everyone in the chat, absolute legends. The questions are absolutely spot on all the way through. Have to give a massive shout out very, very quickly to Black and White Army, massive supporters of the channel and everything they've done. Obviously, Bronwyn with her new range 1881, which you can get, the loaded hat. Loaded hat is on the way for me, for Daz and a number of others in the loaded team. Get your loaded hat. Massive support to Shyburn, Simon and the crew for all their support with Loaded HQ. Massive support of mental health. Get behind it and show your support to Shy Burns. And we also have pins and prints, which we've already talked about. Some fantastic pins, fantastic prints that we've shown you over the course of the season, and many more to come. There is no doubt about that. Last push for subscribers, pushing on to 3K. We're very, very close to that, getting into the point where we're just under 100 subscribers away. And as Alan did tonight, come and join the Loaded family and become a member. But at that point, we will let you go. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Pray for 3 points, but certainly a positive performance that can kick us into the next 2 games. You guys take care, and we'll speak to you soon. And as always, we do love playing away. You guys look after yourself.